the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 14th of April. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, MPs say there was no evidence of two-tier policing in the handling of the Southport riots last summer, calling the claims baseless and saying the police response was entirely appropriate. But what do you think? Do you agree with that assessment?
Do you agree? And some breaking news in the last hour. The Gambling Commission has charged 15 people with offences following an investigation into alleged cheating related to bets placed on the timing of the 2024 general election. We'll have the latest from Westminster.
And stop appeasing extremists in our jails. That's the call from MPs as questions continue to be asked about why a Manchester Arena bomb plotter had access to a self-cook kitchen, hot cooking oil and the materials for makeshift weapons used in this horrific attack over the weekend. We're going to speak to Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick.
And later on in the show, you're going to hear me soar. Yes, those lyrics. Katy Perry, alongside 5 other women, will blast off from the Earth in Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket. The mission marks the first all-female space crew since 1963, and we're going to bring it to you live. Yes, so it's been a lovely weekend, hasn't it, Tom?
It's been a big weekend for you, Emily, for one particular reason.
Yes, we did make an announcement, and if you haven't already heard, and I'm sure lots of you have already heard, so I don't want to bore you. But yes, Patrick and I did announce on Friday night, actually, with the studio audience on Patrick's show that we're expecting a baby in early September. So that's very exciting, and we really appreciate. So here's a little picture of one of the ultrasounds we had a couple of weeks ago.
That is.
So you can make it out. It's very much a baby, and only one baby.
Just the one baby, but due for September, which is a spectacular time of year to be born. But you are looking absolutely delighted.
Well, it's quite an emotional thing to happen. I know, millions and billions of women have had children before, but I think for everyone, well, for most people, it's very special that first time.
No, it's a hugely special thing, and goodness me, it's a GB News baby, and it's such a truth. It does feel like this channel can be a family sometimes, a big and weird and wonderful family, but I think that everyone watching would want to extend the warmest congratulations. I mean, this is such an exciting time.
I mean, with Patrick and I as parents, I mean, it's probably going to be quite opinionated, isn't it? Quite opinionated.
I feel
perhaps
sorry
bordering on gobby.
I feel sorry for their classmates. Going
to be arguing with the teachers. No, they won't. They'll understand authority and discipline.
It's competing values, isn't it, really? It's the radical, fearless, sort of opinionated stuff, but also the structure and the authority and the hierarchy. I mean, which is going to win out?
Which is going to win out? You never know. It could come out as a radical, progressive activist.
That there is so often the case where sort of, one generation is very much one way and then the next generation rebels and sort of, you do often in families sort of have grandparents and grandchildren uniting against the middle and then vice versa. I don't know.
Whereas I was just indoctrinated from a young age, you see. Thank you very much for all your warm words. It's a really exciting time, and we'll keep you updated, of course, maybe even reveal the gender at some point, because I know some of you are quite nosy about that sort of thing, which fair enough.
And you've chosen to know? We've chosen
to know. So there you go. Perhaps that's the wrong thing to do. The element of surprise is lost, perhaps. But gbnews.com/your
You've got to know whether to buy the dinosaur toys or the Barbies.
Oh, no, got to be gender neutral these days, Tom. Got to be gender neutral.
Got to paint it a very gender neutral, so the bedroom has to be grey and just completely devoid of any personality.
What about yellow or green, Tom?
Are those gendered colours? Interestingly, pink used to be the boys' colour in the Victorian age.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
we could go pink for a boy, pink for a girl.
There you go.
But do get in touch about everything. What do you make of this Home Affairs Committee and the Obesity family? I mean, it's just an absolute disgrace, these prison officers having to go through that. But let's get to the headlines with Sam.
Very good morning, good afternoon to you. In fact, the top story just after midday. It is breaking news that 15 people, including a former MP, a senior Senate member and an ex-Conservative Party official, have been charged with gambling offences over bets placed on the timing of the general election in 2024. That news announced this morning by the Gambling Commission. Well, among those charged is Craig Williams, former Conservative MP and aide to the then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. He's facing a charge of cheating under the Gambling Act. Others include Russell George, Welsh Conservative Senate member, Laura Saunders, former Tory candidate for Bristol North West, and her husband, Anthony Lee. He is an ex-campaign director for the Conservative Party. Nick Mason, the party's former chief data officer, and ex-police officer Jeremy Hunt, not, of course, to be confused with the former Chancellor. All 15 are due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Friday, the 13th of June. And we'll have more details on that breaking news with our editor Chris Hope later this hour. In other news, the UK government and British Steel are scrambling to secure urgent supplies of coking coal and iron ore to keep the Scunthorpe blast furnaces alive. Without those materials, the furnaces could cool down, a move that would risk permanent closure. The site's Chinese owner has halted raw material orders and even started selling off stock, prompting ministers to step in at the weekend and take over control of the plant. Now union officials say a shipment of coal is expected to be paid for and unloaded within just days, a critical step to avoid a shutdown. Well, on that, we are also just hearing that British Steel has now named 2 long-serving employees as interim executives to steer the company through the current crisis. Alan Bell and Lisa Coulson have stepped in to those roles. Both appointments, we understand, taking effect immediately, having been signed off by the business secretary. Military logistic teams have been drafted in to help coordinate the clean-up in Birmingham, where 17,000 tonnes of waste have piled up after a month-long bin strike. Refuse workers walked out on the 11th of March, and with the city now declaring a major incident, neighbouring councils and even the army are stepping in. But soldiers won't collect the rubbish, they're just helping plan the response as public health concerns grow. Workers will vote on a partial deal today, though the union Unite says it's not enough to end the dispute. Former detective Maggie Oliver has launched a legal campaign to investigate whether senior officials who failed to act over grooming gangs can be prosecuted. The They Knew campaign, backed by survivors from towns like Telford and Rotherham, is seeking thousands of pounds to explore civil claims or private prosecutions against police, councils and other authorities. The move will follow years of government criticism and a 2022 inquiry that called child abuse in England and Wales an epidemic. Volodymyr Zelensky has invited Donald Trump to Ukraine to witness what he described as the horrors of war before striking any deal with Russia. He said, "Come and see the people, the hospitals and children destroyed or dead." His comments came before Sunday's missile strike on Sumy, now Ukraine's deadliest civilian attack this year, killing 34 people, sadly including 2 children. Trump called it horrible as other world leaders condemned the assault as a war crime and urged action to stop the violence. And pop star Katy Perry is set to blast off with Blue Origin on its first ever all-female space mission and says the signs were written in the stars. She'll join 5 other women, including a former NASA rocket scientist and civil rights activist, for the 10-minute suborbital flight. The capsule's name and symbol match nicknames from her mum. A coincidence, Perry says, proves the mission was meant to be. Well, liftoff is at around 2:30 UK time, and you can catch it live here on GB News. That's the news on GB News. Plenty more from me. And if you can bear it, why don't we find out more about Emily? I think she's pregnant.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
chatty from Sam there.
Entirely good-natured, I know.
Just jealous. Well, a report has revealed, in serious news, it is 12:09, a report has revealed that the response from police forces during last summer's Southport riots was entirely appropriate despite claims at the time of two-tier policing. Those are the claims in this report.
Well, the report from the Home Affairs Committee brands any claims of two-tier policing as disgraceful, but does find that police forces were unprepared for the level of violence that broke out on the streets.
OK, well, joining us now is our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, take us through some of the findings of this report, then.
Well, on that issue of preparedness, yes, the Home Affairs Committee says that police forces across the country were just not prepared for the level of violence, a possibility of violence. Some of the mutual aid response that should be in place was a bit disjointed and slow. And in terms of the messaging that, of course, went out in the aftermath of the Southport attacks, because many of the people took to the streets, or at least anger, seemed to be fueled by what they were seeing in the likes of X and other social media accounts, the void being filled by the lack of information from official sources. So this report saying that there needs to be a review of the way in which they counter disinformation that's often out there in the public realm. But of course, we now know, actually, with the fullness of time, that not all of the anger that people were feeling over disinformation was false. The Prime Minister himself admitted that there were elements of this case, such as terrorist literature found in this individual's house, such as the fact that he was making a biological weapon, namely the toxin ricin. He knew about that, but didn't put that out into the public realm because he felt that it could be prejudicial to any upcoming trial. So, as well as the messaging, perhaps they need to be looking at a bit more honesty in the initial information that they give out as well.
Well, they've thrown cold water on the claims that there was two-tier policing, haven't they? Do you think that people are legitimate in their criticism that the police acted in a two-tier way?
Well, I know that at the time there was a lot of concern 11 days before when we saw an incident. There was a safeguarding incident in Hare Hills in Leeds, which then descended into really serious disorder and saw the police effectively involved in a tactical withdrawal. And there was real concern there that because of the diverse nature of that community, that it was done so as not to inflame community tensions. Whether there's any truth in that or not, I don't know. People have been prosecuted after Hare Hills in the months since those riots. But at the time, that was certainly one of the factors that was feeding the anger of those involved in some of the subsequent disorder post-Southport. We also saw incidents, actually, multiple incidents of, after a number of days of the protests that led to disorder and then sometimes descended into serious riots, of what we call counter-protests, other groups coming out onto the street. And these groups, certainly in the way they were portrayed, the way they were spoken about, even by official sources within policing, was these were concerned people in communities coming out, when actually a lot of this was being orchestrated by activist groups who come out specifically when they feel that there is some kind of far-right-led protest, and then you get the kind of far-left, the anti-fascist groups that sort of come out. But they were always portrayed as concerned people within communities protecting their own communities. So I think that also embedded in the mindset of those that were out protesting that perhaps there was a two-tier approach from those in officialdom.
Really interesting stuff. Do stay with us there, Mark White. We'll be coming back to you in just a second. But for now, we're joined by former police officer Kevin Jewell. Kevin, there's been a huge amount of criticism about the way in which the police responded, particularly the contrast between the Southport riots and the Hare Hills disorder. Why do you think it is that the Home Affairs Committee seemingly didn't find a difference?
Good morning, firstly. I think there's a number of different aspects to this, which Mark has covered in his piece just there around, if we're looking at the policing per se, and if we start at the very top, then one of the primary objectives of the police is to uphold the peace of the public. So when you get to rioting, it shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter who is causing the problems. Now then you come on to capability around that, and there's just covered in the report around the tactical withdrawal, which also links to the Home Affairs Committee report around preparedness to deal with the riots. There's so many issues and fundamental parts involved in this. It's kind of not easy to answer with just one question, because on top of that, you've then also got the concerns, I think, which have been raised and again highlighted just now around what happened afterwards and, the prosecutions that took place. But I think if we start with, first and foremost, the police have to uphold the peace, and they did that under extreme circumstances. And then obviously we come into the fact of, were they fully equipped to do that? Did they have the resources, the mutual aid, etc., etc.? But over and above everything else, I think that the police dealt with the disorder as best they could, and that wasn't two-tier policing. They had to protect life and property.
Yeah, I mean, it's just casting our minds back to what happened in Hare Hills. I mean, we all saw footage of the police running away. We saw footage of a bus being set alight. We saw footage of violence, police cars. Here's the police officers running away there. It looks very different to how the summer riots, the far-right riots, as they're called, were policed.
Yeah, I think equally, though, on the Southport riots, we saw police officers cowering by walls and trying to avoid missiles. So it's certainly not ideal what happened with regards to calling it a tactical withdrawal. But the command at the time has got to make that almost split-second decision as what is safe, what's at risk. If we're talking about people are uniting against the police and throwing things, and it's the police that are in danger, then they would retreat. However, if it was a case that they were, setting light to buildings where there was a danger to life, they would have to respond, and there wouldn't have been the withdrawal.
OK, well, Kevin Jewell, former police officer, thank you indeed for talking us through that. Really interesting stuff there. It does seem, I think, that there, on the face of it, does look like a difference. But then, of course, you've got to think about, do they have the right equipment? Do they have the right riot gear?
No, but you had groups of Asian lads sort of, running around areas. I mean, there was the instance at the Clumsy Swan pub in Yardley. And it led to... it was because of all these false rumours that had gone around that there were all these going to be these far-right rallies, and they were going to be outside here. So lots of groups of Asian lads came with pro-Palestine flags. They were racing their cars around, etc., etc. And then there was a press conference after all this, and the superintendent said he'd met with community leaders prior to the event to understand the style of policing that we needed to deliver. So who are these self-appointed community leaders that he was talking to at the time? And why should the police be dictated to, if they were indeed dictated to, by what their thoughts about whether they needed to police it or not?
Does seem...
I mean, it's totally bizarre. I mean, this was all being live streamed because you can't escape reality now. People have TikTok, people have live streams on their Twitter, they have live streams on their Facebook, so everyone can see things and make their own judgments.
It does seem absolutely bonkers that you'd sort of asked, how do you want to be policed? It's a bit like asking all of these local councils, would you like to be investigated over grooming gangs, or would you choose to put that money in a different way? Well, we're going to stick with law and order now, because the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, says that extremists are ruling the roost in UK prisons, all as outrage continues to grow following that gruesome attack from a Manchester Arena bomb plotter.
Yes, it was Hashim Abedi who attacked 3 prison officers with hot oil and makeshift weapons. Questions now being asked as to how he had access to a self-cooked kitchen and the materials used in his attack, seeing as he was known to be one of the most dangerous inmates in the United Kingdom, with a history of attacking officers.
Oh, good. So let's get the latest on this with Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, still with us. Mark, this does seem extraordinary that such a high-profile, high-security prisoner was given the material to cook.
There is no doubt that the Prison Officers Association, the union that acts for prison officers, is absolutely furious at the situation that should unfold, where you have the most dangerous individuals, as they would be described, those with an extremist mindset that can't be turned around, that need to be contained, that need to be isolated from the rest of the prison population, so they can't have any kind of an effect on those individuals as well, that they should have access to the likes of a kitchen where you can, of course, come into contact with items that can be fashioned, as it seems happened on this occasion, can be fashioned into weapons with metal baking trays that apparently were used to make two 20-centimetre long blades that were used to attack those prison officers. So some real concern there, and I think Robert Jenrick touches on that as well. There is an issue separate to the separation centres that are in prisons for those seen as the most extreme elements of the terrorist prison population. There are other issues around Muslim gangs within prisons who are not in segregation units as such, but in amongst the main population. They now account for about 18%, more than 18% of the overall prison population are now described as Muslim. Now, that's 3 times the representation of Muslims in the country as a whole. And one of the sort of factors at the play, they believe, are the conversion of people to Islam within prisons, because you've got these gangs that are roaming about and they are threatening, in some cases, individuals to convert to Islam or suffer the consequences. There has been independent reports that have been carried out into this that found examples of this, and the Prison Officers Association and prison officers have been warning about this issue for some time as well. Yeah,
Jonathan Hall's report, Jonathan Hall KC's report in 2022, speaking about these charismatic, violent, self-styled emirs whose job is to radicalise the prison population, get them on side, or presumably threaten them with extreme violence.
Yeah, this one is going to be really, really interesting to dive into. We're joined now by the former inmate of HMP Wandsworth, David Shipley. David, really interested in your perspective on this. Is there much conversion going on in our prisons? Did you see sort of a large amount of sort of Islamic activity in HMP Wandsworth?
Yeah, there is a lot of conversion to faith generally, I think, in prison. And that's not always something that's sinister. But you certainly see a lot of men who are in prison reflecting on their life and the desire to join a group which might make them feel supported and part of something. It's really important. Certainly, from my own experience and from speaking to men who've been in the higher security jails, which tend to hold the Islamist prisoners, what seems to happen is that when prisoners convert to Islam, all their previous sins are washed away. So the Islamist gangs will even accept people who are sex offenders, for example, and they will not worry about their previous crimes. So that can be very appealing to lots of men in the prison system. And then when you have those converts being drawn into interactions with jihadists and Islamists who will seek to radicalise them, that can be very dangerous.
That's very interesting, that point you make about their sins being wiped away when they join one of these Islamist gangs. So essentially, they get protection, all their sins wiped away. Other gangs may not have wanted them in their crew within the prison, but they do have a gateway to feeling some sense of, I guess, protection more than anything else,
Yes.
David.
Yes, exactly. A friend of mine was at HMP Belmarsh for some time, and he described a situation where one of the most important prisoners on the wing was a sex offender. And that wouldn't normally happen in a jail, but because he'd converted to Islam, he was protected by all the other Muslims on that wing.
That's a fascinating dynamic that I suppose it's... you don't really think about the sort of internal, not politics, but sort of safety arrangements and rival gangs within prisons so much. I mean, I was sort of thinking, what is it about Islam specifically that would have invited people to convert? But it could just be this sort of, this group protection mechanism that facilitates this all.
Yeah, it absolutely is one of the drivers. And I think because we have quite a large Muslim population in our prison system, especially in some of the city jails, and particularly in the Belmarshes and Franklands, we do have a situation where they're often the biggest gang. And this isn't new information. Jonathan Hall KC wrote a really good report about this in 2022, where he talked about this culture of appeasement of the Muslim gangs within prisons. So the government knows about this, the prison service knows about this, and they haven't done enough to stop it.
Yeah, do you think, David, that some of the authorities don't know how to deal with Muslim gangs? So they might know how to deal with, I don't know, what might be perceived as a different type of gang. I don't know what other types of gangs there might be, a far-right gang or, an EDL-type gang, football hooligan-type gang, but they struggle when there's a religious element because they don't want to be seen as, I don't know, discriminatory.
Yes, that absolutely is an issue. It's not just my opinion. As I said, the Hall report from 2022 talks about exactly this issue. There's a fear of causing offence, a fear of being seen as racist, a desire to often defer to the wing emir, they're called, who's responsible for running the wing and keeping it quiet. And you can have quite a dangerous situation where these wings can actually be really calm because the Muslim gang is in control of it. And that can feel quite good to prison staff because that's a calm wing, there's no problem. But actually what they've done is ceded power and authority to the prisoners.
That's absolutely fascinating insight. David Shipley, thank you very much indeed. You were an inmate of HMP Wandsworth, obviously no more. In the next hour, that's very interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That actually, it can be easier for the police officers on the face of it until things kick off. But in the next hour, Robert Jenrick is going to join us, the Shadow Justice Secretary. He's got some views.
He certainly does. We'll be talking to him live in the studio. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come on today's programme. Indeed, an army of 3. Yes, 3. They're summoned to tackle the Birmingham bin crisis. Is 3 armed forces officers all that's really needed? We'll have the latest after this.
Was that 3 too many, Tom?
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's our passion, health and fitness is our passion. And we was always telling the people we were doing the workouts for, get the kids involved, build the healthy habits into them at an early age, and they stand a way better chance, you sticking to it
on with them
later
on in life,
At what age do you get to work with them?
They're anything from the age of sort of 9 to about 12 at the minute.
Tell the viewers a little bit about Jacob, his story, how you've been helping him.
So Jacob had been getting bullied, and he even quit his local football team as well due to name calling. And he knew we were into boxing and he wanted to give training a bit of a go. So we took him under our wing and started doing a bit of boxing with him, playing a bit of football, just getting him moving and getting him a bit more active.
Getting him off the screen.
Yeah.
He had a bad gaming habit, and he would spend all his time in his room, sort of on his devices. Mm-hmm. So our focus was to get him out and get him active. I mean, the bullying stopped. He's lost a lot of weight. I mean, it was never about the weight loss for us. It was just getting him confident again. Our aim is to get him back to playing football soon.
And is the bullying stopped because they think he's fit enough now, he could whack them back if they...
I think it stopped because he's with us.
Yeah.
You know?
So what do you do with these kids? How do you get them to lose this weight?
So it's physical activities. So Jacob doesn't like boxing, really. He likes football, so we're doing football with him. With Spencer, it's mainly talking to him because he's fairly active, but his parents describe him as a little bit hot-headed. He suffers a bit of autism, and he gets a bit angry with situations when plans change last minute. So it's talking to him really and finding what activities they like. And with the diet, they've got to eat clean.
The People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 29 minutes past midday. Now GB News can reveal that, get this, only 3 army personnel have been deployed to help fix Birmingham's ongoing bin crisis. And none of them are frontline soldiers.
Yeah, instead it's the office-based military planners who've been sent in to provide logistical support. Logistical support to who, though?
And when you say calling in the army, as many papers have been reported, did they really think that it was just 3 individuals that constitutes sending in the army? Maybe it is with regard to our personnel cuts. Maybe that's half the armed forces that are available.
I don't know, but it'd be a bleak day if we had to send in the whole of our troops to clear some rubbish out of Birmingham. I mean, seriously. Well, joining us with the latest is GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, what is going on? Who exactly is sending in these army officers, and what exactly are they there to do?
Yeah, good questions. I think when we saw this on the newspaper headlines this morning, people had images of tanks rolling across the lawn and helicopters swooping in, and finally, this is being dealt with. It has been going on for a month. 17,000 tons of rubbish. As you say, it's actually 3 office workers. They're there for logistical purposes, and I've asked the government to explain this more deeply. And they say they're there just to support those on the ground. It's not really going to immediately tackle what is obviously now, even by the government's own words, being described as a public health issue. So this is what the government are saying as of today. My colleague Christopher Hope is currently in the lobby briefing with the number 10 spokesperson, so he'll have more shortly. But in the meantime, in light of the ongoing public health risk, a small number of office-based military personnel with operational planning expertise have been made available to Birmingham City Council to provide further support in this area. So Birmingham City Council must be delighted that they've got 3 people there in an office somewhere. Look, there's going to be a ballot on this today. This is all to do with Unite, encouraging their workers to down tools. As I said, it's been going on since the 2nd week of March. There's a huge amount of rubbish. Viewers on television will see some of the scenes as of this week. It's really quite extraordinary. But it doesn't look like, even if the ballot passes today, it will actually end anything significant soon. It's going to continue for some time yet. And I should also say that the 3-person team may grow at some point. It is a flexible number, and there is the government does have the power to expand that at some stage. But at the moment, there we are. You can fit them all in the back of a cab, and there's 17,000 tons of rubbish still on the streets.
Well, hang on a minute. These guys might be extremely competent. You just need one chief, don't you, really, to sort things out. But Adam Cherry, we'll have to leave it there. Please let us know if there are any updates on that front. Adam Cherry, our GB News reporter there in Westminster.
In the back of a cab, you could almost get them on a tandem bicycle.
That doesn't mean they're not useful, eh?
Well,
couldn't get much worse, could it?
No, but I mean... Also,
well, maybe it could.
Well, we've had many conversations about this bin strike. I mean, the fact that they just don't sack a lot of the bin workers and get a new team in, I don't know why.
Also, guys, a team together with your neighbours and...
Yeah, no, I think that is something that's under-discussed, isn't it?
Well, that's because it sounds judgmental.
People leaving rubbish at their end of the roads. I mean, I can understand everyone's frustrations, but why wouldn't you organise some sort of community, pass around, pick things up, move it to a dump?
Yeah, there's this lady, I saw a clip of this lady who was trying to stop people from dumping the rubbish. She said, the collector's already come, and people were just doing it anyway, just dumping their rubbish there anyway, because presumably they've got nowhere else to put it. But, if they actually work together, maybe they could take it to the bin collection site anyway. But perhaps I'm being judgmental.
Now, we should say the government has now issued a statement saying the government has already provided a number of staff to support the council with logistics and make sure that the response on the ground is swift to address the associated public health risks. In light of the ongoing public health risk, a small number of office-based military personnel with operational planning expertise have been made available to Birmingham City Council to provide support in this area.
Really not much information, is it? Unite's General Secretary, that's the trade union, Sharon Graham, said, whilst it is helpful that the government finally realised after weeks that they have a role in this dispute, the constant attacks and briefings against these low-paid bin workers is frankly a disgrace. Of course, these these workers are in the driving seat around what they wish to accept. Indeed, there is another ballot happening by close of play on Monday. Unite backs these workers 100%. So there you go. That is what's going on at the moment. And this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
Well, there's plenty more coming in today's show. We're going to be live from Downing Street with that latest update from our very own political editor on all things politics. That's after your headlines with Sam.
Very good afternoon to you at 34 minutes past 12. The top story, 15 people, including a former MP, a senior Senedd member and ex-Conservative Party officials, have all been charged with gambling offences over bets placed on the timing of the 2024 general election. That's according to the Gambling Commission. Among those charged is Craig Williams, former Conservative MP and aide to the then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who faces an offence of cheating under the Gambling Act. Others include Russell George, Welsh Conservative Senedd member, Laura Saunders, former Tory candidate for Bristol North West, and her husband, Anthony Lee. He's an ex-Conservative campaign director. Nick Mason, the party's former chief data officer, and ex-police officer Jeremy Hunt. Not to be confused, of course, with the former Chancellor. All 15 of those charged are due to appear at the Westminster Magistrates Court on Friday the 13th of June. Activist Steve Bray, better known as Stop Brexit Man, has been found not guilty of flouting police rules after blasting The Muppet Show and Darth Vader's theme outside Parliament. Bray was protesting on a traffic island near Westminster during Prime Minister's questions in March last year. Police had told him he was breaching a bylaw restricting amplified noise in Parliament Square, but Bray insisted the map the police used was wrong. Representing himself in court, he argued it was part of his fundamental right to protest. The judge agreed and cleared him of the charge earlier today. The UK government and British Steel are scrambling to secure urgent supplies of coking coal and iron ore to keep the Scunthorpe blast furnaces alive. Without those materials, the furnaces could cool down and a move that risks permanent closure. The site's Chinese owner had halted raw material orders and even started selling off stock, prompting ministers to step in and take control of the plant over the weekend. Now, union officials say a shipment of coal is expected to be paid for and unloaded within days, a critical step to avoid shutdown. And military logistics teams have been drafted in to help coordinate the clean-up in Birmingham, where 17,000 tonnes of waste has piled up after a month-long bin strike. Refuse workers walked out on the 11th of March, and with the city now declaring a major incident, neighbouring councils and even the army are stepping in. Soldiers won't collect rubbish, though, but are helping plan the response as public health concerns grow. Workers will vote on a partial deal today, though Unite says it's not enough to end the dispute. That's the latest from the GB Newsroom for now. A full roundup with the news at 1. Next, though, we can take a look at the markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Well, let's get you up to date with the markets just after 12:30. The pound will buy you $1.3185 and €1.1567. The price of gold, £2,446.91 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is currently at 8,133 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report. Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. The latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A9000 Forth Road Bridge is experiencing restrictions southbound due to ongoing lane closures, so plan for extra time. In West Sussex, the A27 westbound between the A259 Chichester West and A259 Havant is down to one lane following an accident where a vehicle crossed the central reservation. For those travelling from Raglan to Monmouth on the A40, the road is closed for carriageway maintenance with diversions set up. Drivers on the A1 southbound between the M62 and A639 near Wakefield should expect a 10-minute delay. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 20 minutes to 1 and almost time for 6 trailblazing women about to make space history. And yes, Katy Perry, the pop star, is one of them.
Yes, Katy Perry is, if you don't know her, she's famous for a song that's You're Gonna See Me Roar. So
yes.
This time she's going to soar.
Oh, very good.
That's what our clever producer wrote.
She's also famous for firework.
And firework.
Which we hope that this rocket won't go off like a firework. It would be very unfortunate for all the women on board.
Oh, yeah, touch wood, guys. So from pop royalty to rocket science, this all-female crew, they're set to soar above Earth in a Blue Origin capsule led by Jeff Bezos' fiancée, Lauren Sanchez. Oh, so Lauren Sanchez is the chief...
Yeah, she's the main one on board, but of course Katy Perry's coming along as well as a woman called Gayle King. She's a CBS News presenter over in the United States. Aisha Bow is from NASA. She'll be on board as well. But there's also a civil rights activist called Kerry-Anne Flynn as well. And they're all going to go on what is a space tourism trip. This is a rocket that has specially been designed just to go straight up and straight down again to the what's known as the Kármán line, just beyond the Kármán line, 100 kilometres north of sea level. Not north, but, you know, up from sea level. If it was just north from sea level, you know, you wouldn't get into space at all.
You lost me, Tom. Right. I was thinking about Katy Perry's Instagram post, which we're going to show you a little bit later, if we can get our hands on it. Apparently she's dreamt of going to space for 15 whole years.
Wow, 15 years? What's specific?
For 15 years. I don't know what happened 15 years ago.
How old is Katy Perry? She's what, 30-something, 35?
Late 30s, maybe?
Late 30s? What a strange and specific number of 15 years that she's...
Usually it's when you're a child, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would have said I've been dreaming to go to space since I was born or whatever, you know.
Since I was a little tiny child.
But this is a little bit of a controversial rocket because the only thing this does is take people up into space. Just to the edge of space, they float around for a little bit and then they come straight back down. And some people say, well, why have they developed an entire rocket just for this? There's no science that's going to be done on board this, nothing new is going to be learnt, but some rich, famous or lucky people will be able to see Earth from an entirely new perspective.
Yeah, so how did this lot get to go on it? What was special about them?
Well, this is all Lauren Sanchez's work.
They're her
apparently.
mates.
This is. I believe that she is friends with Katy Perry, but no doubt a lot of work has gone into sort of selecting those to go on board.
You have to be quite fit, don't you? And you have to have good. You can't get motion sickness too badly.
You can't get motion, but it's getting easier and easier. I mean, it's not as sort of testing.
You don't need a six-pack anymore.
No, I mean, who's the oldest person to go into space? It was on this rocket, but who was it? That chap from Star Trek. I think he was 80 years old or something.
Oh.
William Shatner. That was his name.
Oh, well, there you go.
So
at least someone in our ear knows.
That's right. That's right. But this is an interesting sort of experiment in terms of developing this rocket, because this is sort of the baby rocket of Blue Origin. Blue Origin is Jeff Bezos's space company. It competes with companies like SpaceX. All the billionaires have a rocket company. But this is the straight up, straight down space tourism New Shepard rocket. Meanwhile, the company's also working on a rocket that's maybe 10 times as powerful, called the New Glenn. And that's the one that would be capable of getting actually up into orbital launches or even beyond to the moon and such like. So the technology that goes into this rocket helps the development of the other larger rockets.
I haven't got anything against it. I guess it's a bit of a PR exercise for Jeff Bezos and his rockets, isn't it? And these women are happy to go along with it. Well, they're getting something out of it. They're getting a lot of fame out of it as well.
Some people say that
excitement, I suppose.
It's just sort of billionaires and their playthings. You have to be hyper wealthy, hyper rich, hyper famous in order to do it. But I mean, I think it's very similar to a lot of technologies. I mean, back in the 1950s or 1940s, the only people to fly would be the elite, and now that's become democratised. Similarly, you know, the only people who had electric cars 10 years ago were the massively wealthy, and now that's becoming more democratised. We're on that path with space travel, so it won't be too many decades.
Yeah, I mean,
and we'll all be going up on the.
I mean, Becca says, what's the point of developing a rocket to go up and then come straight back down again? The usual madness and waste of money. I guess yes, but at least we're not paying for it. I mean, Bezos is paying for it, presumably. Chris says Bezos is just greedy and pointless. Betty says more money than sense. Yeah, it looks as though none of you are impressed, really. And Brian thinks there's something phallic about the rocket ship.
There is about all rockets.
And you're not the only one who's pointed that out. Thank you for that on this Monday afternoon.
Goodness me. But there is something serious here. That is, when people go to space, they say their perspective of Earth completely shifts. That there is something so unique about going up there, looking down on Earth, seeing everyone who has ever lived, ever died, any action in history or in the future of this planet, all has happened beneath your feet. I mean, that is quite a magical and miraculous thing to sort of look down on.
It is, Tom, but I'm just so amused by the comments saying that the rocket is shaped like something it shouldn't be shaped like. It's a racy rocket, Tom.
How would you rather they shape the rocket? I mean, it's.
Well, not like something a bit rude.
Well, maybe that's the best shape to actually sort of be aerodynamic. They can't make it wide or flat.
Bobby says it's sponsored by Ann Summers.
Oh, goodness me.
So there you
we
go.
Really set you off this afternoon. Please, no more.
Anyway, we are going to bring you that launch at 2:30 because it is exciting and we can all comment on the shape of it again, once again. And we will be speaking to Christopher Hope, our political editor. He's got lots of news to bring us from the heart of government. But if you're in search of some winter sun away from here, some spring sun indeed, here's the forecast.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. After the very wet weather over the weekend across parts of the Canaries, it's turning a little bit dry here as we move into next week. Still some showers around here though on Tuesday, but the main area of wet weather will be across parts of Iberia, France and Italy, where we could see some flash flooding in places. But for Greece and Turkey, plenty of sunshine here, and as we see out the week, temperatures for most here should climb into the low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. A bit of a messy day out there today. There's some heavy rain around, even a bit of thunder mixed in. Not everyone will see it. Towards the southeast, a greater chance of staying dry because you're further away from the low pressure centres, but elsewhere we're heavily under the influence of low pressure and various fronts pushing their way in. As a result, we have some fairly persistent rain affecting some western parts of Wales, southwest England and into the northwest of England and pushing into the borders areas as well. Elsewhere, a fair few showers around, but just like I said, towards the southeast, a greater chance of staying dry and some warmth here still, high teens for some places. Elsewhere, with a lot of cloud around and especially in the rain, it is going to feel markedly fresher than it did this time last week. But then as we go into this evening, staying with that pretty messy picture, further showers across many parts of Scotland with some more persistent rain feeding into eastern parts, Aberdeenshire, as we go through this evening. Showers to end the day, even some bright clear spells across parts of Northern Ireland, but still this front lingering down across parts of northwest England through western Wales and towards the southwest. Some heavy persistent rain mixed in with this. Further east, always dry for a time, but as we go overnight, I am expecting a few more showers to develop and push their way into some southeastern parts. And again, these could be quite heavy and possibly thundery as we go through the early hours of tomorrow as well. Otherwise, and where you don't get the wet weather, there will be some clear skies around Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland. A touch of frost is possible, but most places a milder start than we saw through much of last week. Otherwise then, through Tuesday, we have some further heavy persistent rain pushing in, particularly across parts of the southwest. Devon, Cornwall likely to have an increasingly wet day, also western parts of Wales. Elsewhere, a fair few showers around and only limited bright or sunny spells. But if you do get any sunshine, not feeling too bad. High teens in the southeast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Right, good afternoon, Britain. It's 12:51 and it's been 14 years in the making. Yes, Rory McIlroy, he won the Masters and completed the career Grand Slam.
Yes, a nervy final round at Augusta, which went to a playoff, saw the Northern Irish player make a gutsy birdie on the 18th to claim victory.
He becomes the 6th male golfer to complete the career Grand Slam, and he said he's dreamt about that moment for as long as he can remember.
Well, it is a huge, huge moment. I mean, in the whole of golfing history, just the 6th individual, and he's a Brit. Well, joining us now is Tony Denver, president of the Hollywood Golf Club, the home club of Rory McIlroy. Tony, you must be so proud.
Yes, we are. We are fantastically proud of what Rory achieved last night. It's just an incredible achievement, it really is.
Did you always know he was going to be a superstar?
Well, from a very young age, Rory just had a God-given talent to play the game of golf. His father, his grandfather, obviously were also very good players in their own right, but Rory was just something special. From a very young age, he showed it in this golf club, and we're not really surprised he has got to where he has got to be honest with you. He is just one of the greatest ever.
Now, did you all stay up late last night to watch it, or was it an early morning discovery? How has everyone in and around the golf club been reacting this morning?
Oh, no, we stayed up last night, watched to the very final putt and watched it until, I can just see on the screen there, that's footage from the club last night. We watched it right up until he got the green jacket put on his shoulders by Scotty Scheffler. And the atmosphere in this golf club last night was just electric.
Oh, yes,
we have
we're
never
watching.
seen anything. Look at that. Those scenes are just incredible.
Oh, fantastic stuff. So what happens now, do you think, mentally? He's achieved what so few have achieved. Where does he go now?
Well, as you said yourself, there's only been 5 previous golfers who have done the Grand Slam. So Rory is number 6. But he's still a young man. He's only 35 years of age, I think.
Yeah.
I think from now, once he's got that final, the monkey off the back, as they say, getting that major, getting that green jacket, I think he will take off now and he will win quite a few more majors. He's certainly not going to stop now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for giving us your perspective. What a wonderful, wonderful news. I must admit, I woke up to the news because I go to bed rather early. But that was Tony Denvir, president of Hollywood Golf Club, the home club of Rory McIlroy, no less.
I think Rory's the first person since Tiger Woods to have achieved it all, and that was about 25 years ago.
Must feel strange to just achieve everything you set out to achieve at 35.
Yeah, where do you go from there? This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. And you shouldn't be going anywhere because we're going to be finally with Christopher Hope live on Downing Street after the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. A bit of a messy day out there today. There's some heavy rain around, even a bit of thunder mixed in. Not everyone will see it. Towards the southeast, a greater chance of staying dry because you're further away from the low pressure centres, but elsewhere we're heavily under the influence of low pressure and various fronts pushing their way in. As a result, we have some fairly persistent rain affecting some western parts of Wales, southwest England and into the northwest of England and pushing into the borders areas as well. Elsewhere, a fair few showers around, but just like I said, towards the southeast, a greater chance of staying dry and some warmth here still, high teens for some places. Elsewhere, with a lot of cloud around and especially in the rain, it is going to feel markedly fresher than it did this time last week. But then as we go into this evening, staying with that pretty messy picture, further showers across many parts of Scotland with some more persistent rain feeding into eastern parts, Aberdeenshire, as we go through this evening. Showers to end the day, even some bright clear spells across parts of Northern Ireland, but still this front lingering down across parts of northwest England through western Wales and towards the southwest. Some heavy persistent rain mixed in with this. Further east, always dry for a time, but as we go overnight, I am expecting a few more showers to develop and push their way into some southeastern parts. And again, these could be quite heavy and possibly thundery as we go through the early hours of tomorrow as well. Otherwise, and where you don't get the wet weather, there will be some clear skies around Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland. A touch of frost is possible, but most places a milder start than we saw through much of last week. Otherwise then, through Tuesday, we have some further heavy persistent rain pushing in, particularly across parts of the southwest. Devon, Cornwall likely to have an increasingly wet day. Also western parts of Wales. Elsewhere, a fair few showers around and only limited bright or sunny spells. But if you do get any sunshine, not feeling too bad. High teens in the southeast.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, like yourself, I'm an Oldham boy, so I remember as a kid the holidays in Blackpool were just incredible. And I think, what we did with this survey was trying to understand where people said they wanted to go, but I think the key bit was why. So we wanted to understand what was important about the UK holiday, and also just understand a little bit about, attitudes to travelling abroad and the UK. And I think, for me, 61% of people said the reason they need a holiday is family time. So for me, to be honest, whether that's in Cornwall, whether it's Essex, Lancashire, it doesn't matter. What really matters is that time together, isn't it, with your family, your loved ones. That I think we all need more and more in a nutty world in which we live at the moment. So it's what you're doing on holiday as well as where you're going.
Andy, how can we find a good deal out of this? What are some tips and tricks for keeping the spending under control if you're looking for if you're going to Cornwall, for example? I'd imagine if you're looking in July or August, it's going to be pretty expensive, right?
My advice would be, research really carefully where you want to go. Think about what the location can offer, and we've got a range of holiday parks. What the holiday park can offer to you, and just try and plan early. I think it just takes that pressure away from later on. Everyone's on a to a degree a budget these days, but again, I think it's that time together that people will be willing to pay for.
Of course, part of the research as well, Andy, was to do with the economy. 62% of people you asked said that Brits feel we should be going on staycations in order to support our economy. Just how important is that?
Yeah, I think it's really important. It's, the British tourism economy is worth many, many billions per annum, employs, hundreds of thousands of people in tourism.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 14th of April. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, MPs say there was no evidence of two-tier policing in the handling of the Southport riots last summer. They call the claims baseless and say the police response was entirely appropriate. Do you agree with that assessment?
Now, the Gambling Commission has charged 15 people with offences following investigation into alleged cheating relating to bets placed on the timing of the 2024 general election. We'll get the very latest live from Downing Street.
And stop appeasing extremists in our jails. That's the call from MPs as questions continue to be asked as to why a Manchester Arena bomb plotter had access to a self-cooked kitchen, hot cooking oil and the materials for the makeshift weapons used in his horrific attack over the weekend. We're speaking to the Shadow Justice Secretary in the next few minutes, Robert Jenrick.
And later in the show, you're going to hear me soar. Yes, Katy Perry, along with 5 other women, will be blasting off into space from the Earth on Jeff Bezos's New Shepard rocket. The mission marks the first all-female crew since 1963. We'll bring it to you live.
Right, OK, now something that I think we need to speak about is why on earth the Obedi family were in this country to begin with.
I mean, it is extraordinary given, I believe, the mother had been living in this country, moved back to Libya, but continued to receive benefits while living in Libya from the British taxpayer. I mean, make that one make sense.
Yeah. So the father was a member of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, an Islamist organisation opposed to Gaddafi. Now, because it was opposed to Gaddafi, we deemed it appropriate, apparently, to give him asylum, even though he was a member of a different jihadi group.
It's a bit like how there was a newspaper article in the late 1990s talking up this amazing Afghan businessman, the guy that's really sticking it to the Soviets. He was called Osama bin Laden.
And apparently the family, over the years, shuttled between Tripoli and Manchester, where their sons were born. And it just makes a mockery of our asylum system. Who is checking that someone, just because they could be persecuted by one regime, it does not belong to an equally dangerous group on the other hand?
Is this such a childish view of world affairs, where people seem to think there must be the good guys and the bad guys in every conflict? Well, lots of conflicts can actually have quite a lot of bad guys on all different sides. I mean, this is one of the difficulties with all of the votes in the early coalition years. Do we intervene in Syria? Because, of course, what you had was the evil dictator, Bashar al-Assad, and then some of those groups that were fighting him, should we have backed those groups? Some of them turned into ISIS. Of course we shouldn't have backed some of those groups, but also the people that were fighting were bad. I mean, there are some just cases where there are very bad options.
And the parents spawned the Manchester Arena bomber, his accomplice, and the other one fled the country, miraculously. So a nice family that we gave asylum to, and that's the recompense, so that's nice, isn't it? gbnews.com/your say. I might put that to Robert Jenrick. You know, what does this say about our asylum system? But let's have the headlines with Sam Francis.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. The top story this lunchtime: 15 people, including a former MP, a senior Senedd member and an ex-Conservative Party official, have been charged with gambling offence over bets placed on the timing of the 2024 general election. That announcement came from the Gambling Commission this morning. Among those charged is Craig Williams, former Conservative MP and aide to the then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who's facing an offence of cheating under the Gambling Act. Others include Russell George, Welsh Conservative Senedd member, Laura Saunders, former Tory candidate for Bristol North West, and her husband, Anthony Lee, and ex-Conservative campaign director. Nick Mason, the party's former chief data officer, is also charged, and ex-police officer Jeremy Hunt, not, though, to be confused with the former Chancellor. All 15 are due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Friday the 13th of June. The UK government and British Steel are scrambling to secure urgent supplies of coking coal and iron ore to keep Scunthorpe blast furnaces alive. Without those materials, the furnaces could cool down, a move that would risk permanent closure. The site's Chinese owner had halted raw material orders and even started selling off stock, prompting ministers to step in and take control of the plant over the weekend using emergency legislation. Now, union officials say a shipment of coal is expected to be paid for and unloaded within days, a critical step to avoid a shutdown. In Manchester, military logistics teams have been drafted in to help coordinate the clean-up on the streets, where 17,000 tonnes of waste have piled up after a month-long bin strike. Refuse workers walked out on the 11th of March, and with the city now declaring a major incident, neighbouring councils and the army are stepping in. Soldiers, though, won't collect the rubbish. They're helping to plan the response as public health concerns grow. Workers will vote on a partial deal on Monday today, though Unite says it's not enough to end the dispute. Former detective Maggie Oliver has launched a legal campaign to investigate whether senior officials who failed to act over grooming gangs and child sexual abuse can be prosecuted. The They Knew campaign, backed by survivors from towns like Telford and Rotherham, is seeking thousands of pounds to explore civil claims or private prosecutions against police, councils and other authorities. She says if you fail to protect children, you can be held legally accountable. The move follows years of government criticism and a 2022 inquiry that called child abuse in England and Wales an epidemic. Survivors say it is now time for consequences after decades of failure. In Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky has invited Donald Trump to Kyiv to witness the horrors of war before striking any deal with Russia. He says, "Come and see the people, the hospitals, the children destroyed or dead." His comments came after Sunday's missile strike on Sumy, now Ukraine's deadliest civilian attack this year, killing, sadly, 34 people. Trump has called it horrible, and other world leaders condemned the assault as a war crime, urging action to stop the violence. And pop star Katy Perry is set to blast off with Blue Origin on its first ever all-female space mission and says the signs were written in the stars. She'll join 5 other women, including a former NASA rocket scientist and civil rights activist, for the 10-minute suborbital flight. The capsule's name and symbol match nicknames from her mum, a coincidence that Katy Perry says proves the mission was meant to be. Well, you can catch it all live. The liftoff here at around 2:30 here on GB News. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you very shortly. Now, though, it's over to Tom and Emily.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 7 minutes past 1, we're going to head straight to Downing Street, kicking off with our political editor this hour, fresh from a briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesman. And Chris, I've got to ask you straight off the bat, what on earth has been going on with these charges now of more than a dozen people associated with the Conservative Party for election betting?
Yes, quite extraordinary. And hi, Tom. Hi, Emily from Downing Street. Now, number 10 has no comment on these 15 charges levelled against individuals by the Gambling Commission. But it is quite extraordinary, the scale of people who appear to know about the date or alleged to have put money on the date of the July 4th general election. If you remember rightly, we were in the street here for the announcement by Rishi Sunak just behind me in that podium, and we had no idea the election was going to be called then. We all thought it'd be November or December, but there are claims that some people did know it, and there are claims that they put money on the date of election. The names there are a lot of people close to the Tory party. I've been through them. Around 12 out of the 15 people charged have links or direct links to the Conservative Party. Among them are Craig Williams, who was the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's parliamentary private secretary. Others, Anthony Lee, the director of campaigning, Laura Sanders, the party's candidate in Bristol North West for the election, Nick Mason, the party's former chief data officer, Russell George, a member of the Welsh Senate. Now he's been suspended by the party in Wales. Simon Chatfield, the former chief marketing officer at the party. Anthony Hind, said the former digital director of the party. James Ward, the ex-head of voter communication. Ian Makepeace, the ex-member of the Conservative design team. Jacob Wilmer, a former press spokesman at the party. Charlotte Lang, the former candidate in Aberavon. All these people will appear before magistrates in Westminster in June to answer the charges. The Tory party, for its part, though, Tom and Emily are saying this: the party believes those working in politics must act with integrity. Current members of staff who have been charged have been suspended with immediate effect. These incidents took place in May last year. Our party is now under a new leadership. That means Kevin Badenoch, not Rishi Sunak, of course. We are cooperating fully with the Gambling Commission to ensure that their investigation can conclude swiftly and transparently. So all those individuals, those links have been dug out by the Telegraph website in the past hour. It shows to me, although I'm sure they may well deny wrongdoing, some of them, but it shows to me the scale of this apparent case of putting money on the date of the election, which will surprise many people.
Oh dear, not a good look, Christopher. What do the government or Number 10 have to say about what happened in HMP Frankland over the weekend? One of the Abedi brothers, the Manchester Arena bombers, attacking prison officers viciously.
Yes, the government is fully, Number 10 says the Prime Minister is appalled by the attack. They say that something went terribly wrong, as an understatement, in the management of this offender. The sources say that there was a basic kitchen in the unit where the prisoner was being held, and of course we understand that prisoner's being moved away. Now there's a review going on. There's no word on whether the government supports stab vests for prison officers, as we're hearing from prison officer unions. But there was a very long briefing. We get one briefing a week in my world of political journalism, so lots of topics covered. If I can run through them very quickly, the Prime Minister is now on holiday. He's away for a few days with his family. He travelled commercially and he's paying for the break himself. Number 10 or sources in Number 10 won't tell us where he's gone. That's quite common. His privacy is very important, of course. Now, moving on to British Steel, the government now says it is confident of securing the raw materials to keep these two furnaces open. There are two ships in Birmingham docks due to be unloaded shortly. They can contain coking coal from the United States and iron ore pellets. There's a third ship with coking coal coming from New South Wales, Australia. That currently is off the coast of West Africa. That's on the way to Scunthorpe. So Number 10 now says they are confident that the supply of material they can get what they need to keep the furnaces burning. Don't forget, that's why I and others were reporting in Westminster on Saturday from a return of Parliament outside of in the Easter recess, because they were concerned those furnaces could go cold and not be able to be used again. Sources say we should be seeing ministers going up to Scunthorpe in coming days. They also have said that they're using this coal in the West Cumbria mining operation in Cumbria would not be appropriate, they say, because of the high sulphur content. We raised the issue earlier that why did the government allow that mine to close? It was given permission by the Tories back in 2022, allowed to close under this government. Why did that happen? They say it would have exported 85% of its coal extracted. It wouldn't have helped keep Scunthorpe open. They defend that. They also say that net zero is not the reason why we have such high costs of electricity in this country. They're saying that's because we rely heavily on gas, and that's why they say that net zero is not the reason that we have such a problem here with getting cheaper energy sourced to here. Elsewhere, on the Lib Dem MP, we're at Hobhouse. She's been denied getting into Hong Kong. Number 10 says he's got deep concern about this, and that it's unacceptable to deny entry to a parliamentarian who may have expressed views in the past critical of China. On the army being called into Birmingham, you're seeing that. It's not quite as billed. Adam Cherry, my colleague, is reporting correctly. Only 3 members of a logistics team behind the scenes are helping empty those bins. We're not seeing soldiers chucking bin bags into the back of lorries. Maybe, well, not just yet, but as things stand, that's not happening. There's been 100 vehicles leaving the depots today, 12,500 tonnes of rubbish cleared. On two-tier policing, there's a report out today from the government, from the Home Affairs Committee, Tom and Emily. The government says this proves there was no two-tier policing after those riots last August. The Law Commission is reviewing the use of social media posts. Right. And just very finally, on Rory McIlroy, the golfer, no comment on whether he should get a knighthood, but we are told that his performance was due to superb work by him and a tribute to persistence, he says, and it may even inspire young people by his win. Sorry that was so long. It's because of the nature of a Monday lobby in recess.
Oh, absolutely. Christopher, thank you so much for taking us through all of those important stories and what the government has to say. Net zero, one of the reasons why we can't have a productive steel industry in this country, yet we're shipping in coking coal from as far as Australia.
No, it does
it's madness, is it not?
It's perfectly possible to be in favour of net zero and still say this is going to make things more expensive. I think a lot of Green Party people actually say this. Yes, this is going to cost us money, but we should do it. Yeah. That's a perfectly legitimate point of view. But it is flying in the face of reality to say that we have. Energy is expensive in this country because we rely too much on fossil fuels. Is energy even more expensive in America? In Saudi Arabia? I mean, come on.
Well, we know what the answer to those questions is, no. But we're going to return to the report that has revealed the response from police forces, or they claim the response from police forces during last summer's Southport riots was entirely appropriate, despite some claims at the time of two-tier policing.
Well, the report from the Home Affairs Committee brands any claims of two-tier policing as disgraceful, but does find that police forces were unprepared for the level of violence that broke out on the streets.
Well, joining us now is social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Hassan. Rakib, interested to get your thoughts on this one. Are the Home Affairs Committee here turning a blind eye to some obvious discrepancies in policing? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And I'd make the point that this is a disgraceful report. Hugely disappointing. The issue of two-tier policing should be treated with the utmost seriousness, and that includes professional research looking into it. Now, if you look at the police response to the Southport riots, I was supportive of that response. It was a robust response. Merseyside Police very much stood their ground and also received mutual aid and support from neighbouring police forces. But then if you see a few weeks before that, if you see the policing response to the Hales riots, what triggered that was 4 children from a Romani family was being taken into care by police and social services. You saw West Yorkshire Police, in effect, retreat from that situation where you saw a police car overturned, a double-decker bus set ablaze, and violent confrontations with police officers. So I think what's incredible with this report is that Hare Hills was only mentioned once in the report, and Birmingham wasn't mentioned at all. And we saw there in Birmingham, You had West Midlands Police liaising with so-called community leaders when looking to tailor their policing operations in areas with a high Muslim population. So I think it's to say that two-tier policing is almost some kind of myth. I think it's hugely disrespectful, and it's actually gaslighting much of the British public.
This is what a lot of people will feel. A lot of people will look at the footage of the response to the Southport riots and look at the footage of so many other situations and think this just looks to be completely two-tier. But what the police might say is that they were prepared for huge riots when it came to those Southport riots. They knew that they were doing riot response. They had riot gear, they had riot shields. I mean, we saw some of the moronic protesters throw bricks at the shields, bounce off and hit them back. That was particularly amusing. But when it came to some of these other instances, could it be that the police simply did not realise it would be that violent, and so the footage of them running away that we saw at Hare Hills, could that not be explained by police simply not having the right kit with them?
Well, Tom, I think you make a very reasonable point, and that would have been a good point of investigation for this report, except that there's no critical examination of why the policing responses were different between Southport and Hare Hills. I think that would have added great value to the report. The Home Affairs Committee made no such comparative analysis. And I think that you may be a bit too generous towards the police. If you saw that with West Midlands Police, I'll give you an example. If there's a serious risk of public disorder, how many times do you see police forces interacting and liaising with so-called community leaders in the white British mainstream?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that at all.
I don't know what a community leader is in the white British mainstream.
They seem to be self-appointed, don't they?
Precisely, and I want to make this point that if you want to talk about violence last summer, you're talking about riots here. No one was actually killed in these riots, but they were killed at Notting Hill Carnival. If you want to talk about public disorder, and you see that, I think the Met Police almost has an almost forgiving attitude towards Notting Hill Carnival and the violence there. Would they have that almost forgiving attitude, say, if it was a St George's Day parade attended primarily?
Yeah, and I think this idea of two-tier policing, of course, was kicked off really. I mean, of course, there's people who've been talking about this for years and years and years, but the BLM protests, where the police literally took the knee to a protest movement. Thank you very much, Rakib. We're going to have to leave it there because we've run out of time. Dr. Rakib Hassan, who is a social policy analyst.
Well, do stay with us here on GB News. Coming up next on the show, we'll have the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, live in the studio. That's after this short break.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, It happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30am.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 23 minutes past 1. Now, the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, says extremists are ruling the roost in UK prisons as outrage continues to grow following that gruesome attack from a Manchester Arena bomb plotter inside a high-security prison.
Yes, it was Hashim Abedi who attacked 3 prison officers, hot oil, makeshift weapons, and now questions are being asked as to how he had access to a self-cooked kitchen to begin with, and also access to these materials that he could use in this attack, seeing as he was known to be one of the most dangerous inmates in the United Kingdom with a history of attacking officers.
Well, delighted to be joined now by the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. Robert, this just seems like an extraordinary failure. This guy is supposed to be in one of the most high-security prisons, under constant watchful eye, and yet he was given cooking materials, metal, cooking oil. How could it be allowed to happen?
Look, I think it's a very, very concerning incident. As you say, this is one of the most dangerous men in the country. He was in prison. He was actually in a so-called separation unit, which is an area of the prison that is designed to stop extremists from causing difficulties. And yet, he had access to materials that he used to create a makeshift weapon and stab prison officers, and to boiling oil that he ultimately used to pour on the officers. Obviously, my thoughts are with the officers and their families, but we've got to learn lessons from this. In fact, this has got to be a turning point. And there's a broader issue here, which is about Islamist extremism within our prisons. There is mounting evidence, and I and others have been warning about this for some time, that Islamic organisations, there's one called the Brotherhood, which forcibly converts people within our prisons, are ruling the roost in our jails, that they are dictating to governors how the jails operate. They're dictating things such as the diet of prisoners. They are operating quasi-Sharia courts within prisons, and they are controlling them with floggings and beatings. And this has got to end. You know, governors have got to assert themselves and take back control of these prison wards. There should not be individuals like this, these Islamist gangs, taking control of our prisons.
I mean, to undo everything that's happened in our prisons will be an extraordinarily difficult task. So does this fall on governors to sort out? Because we know that prison officers, they're not exactly paid a lot, are they, for what is an extremely difficult and unfortunately dangerous job. How can you unwind that culture in so many of our prisons?
Well, I think we should all have gratitude to prison officers. It's a tough job. As you say, it's not a well-paid job. What we've got to see here are prison governors stepping up and actively asserting themselves once again, not appeasing dangerous people and Islamist groups within our prisons. You should never be putting the welfare of criminals above the safety of prison officers, and that's what essentially has been happening. And I think as a result of some rulings that we've seen in the court, which have tied the hands of prison governors, and a general culture of political correctness, there has not been an effort to take on Islamism within our jails. I mean, your viewers, I think, would be shocked to learn, for example, in HMP Whitemoor, where there was a serious incident yesterday, a murder happened, 45% of the prisoners in that prison are now Muslim. Most were not born Muslim. Most are actually black British men who have converted to Islam whilst they've been in jail, many under the guise of this organisation called the Brotherhood. That is deeply concerning. Something is going on within these prisons. We've got to get a grip of this and ensure that people are not being forcibly converted, and you're not having these practices and able to essentially rule the
It's an
roost.
extraordinary statistic. I do wonder the breakdown of that, of how many of that is conversion, and we'll have to look into that.
But it does speak to... We spoke to a former inmate a little bit earlier on this show who said people often convert for protection. People often convert because there's this sort of sub-justice organisation running through the prisons. And frankly, how much of this is a consequence of one of the topics we keep coming back to over the course of the last 12 months, overcrowding in our prisons? I mean, the fact that we haven't built enough new prisons over the course of decades, that we should have more prisons, and if they were less overcrowded, perhaps they would be easier to govern, that you wouldn't have these gangs, religious or otherwise, operating within our prisons.
I think there's some truth in that. We obviously should be building more prison places.
Why did the Conservative government for 14 years fail to do that?
Well, it did build more prison places than many of its predecessors.
Not per person, because the population rose by millions.
It did build more than the last Labour government, but I think we need to build far more. It took too long to build them. The cost per prison cell is ridiculous today. It's something like £700,000 per prison cell. So we should be building more. But a lot of this is actually common sense. And if you look at the incident, the terrible incident that happened on Saturday, why was somebody who was one of the most dangerous men in Britain given access to a kitchen with all of the facilities that are available to that? This is common sense. That should not be happening. The incident that's happened yesterday at HMP Whitemoor, again, this was in their version of a separation unit, what was called a supervision centre, somewhere where the most dangerous individuals are held. How was somebody in that centre able to go on and kill another inmate? Something is going badly wrong in our prisons. The governors and the Ministry of Justice have got to get a grip on this situation.
Now, a lot of our viewers are concerned as to how this family were in the country to begin with. I understand that the father was a member of a group called the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, who at the time were opposed to Gaddafi. And so the parents were granted asylum in this country back in 1993. Then clear evidence that they were travelling between Tripoli and Manchester throughout those years, and clearly radicalising or helping to radicalise their children. I believe one of the boys has escaped to another country, possibly to Libya as well in the meantime. But why were they granted asylum in the first place? Do we have any answers to that? Was it just our enemy's enemy is our friend?
Well, we don't know all the details because they've never been published, but I think, as you say, it's a parable of what's gone wrong in our asylum system over the last 20 or 30 years, that these individuals fled from the Gaddafi regime, were granted asylum here in the United Kingdom, but it seems to be gross naivety, because just because they were supposedly enemies of the Gaddafi regime does not mean that they are friends of the United Kingdom or people who are safe and suitable to be living amongst British citizens. Far from it. The evidence suggests they went on to radicalise their children, who went on to commit one of the most heinous terrorist attacks in our country in modern times. So, of course, there is a role in very limited circumstances for asylum, but we should be exercising with the greatest degree of care. And at the moment, because the numbers are so vast they're coming into the system, no doubt decisions are being made which are careless and for which the consequences are going to be felt for decades to come.
Also, if the government find out that the family are happily travelling between the two countries, then presumably they can't be in need of asylum or in threat of their own lives in that country. And we see that so much with other cases, don't we? People actually travelling back to Iran or Iraq or wherever it is.
Well, we've seen it with asylum hotels, where when Home Office officials have gone in to audit who's there, many of the rooms are empty because the people who are supposedly claiming asylum here in the UK have gone back on holiday to Albania or to wherever they came from originally to go and meet their friends and their family. The whole system is fundamentally broken, but it comes back to the issue which I've said time and again. You cannot allow these people into the country in the first place. That's why you've got to have a proper deterrent. When you come here, for example, on a small boat, you should be being detained, you should be being removed. The only way to do that is to completely change our human rights laws, leave the European Convention on Human Rights, and have an altogether different asylum system.
Just finally, this is very interesting, because you've always been very clear on this point, that we have to leave the European Convention of Human Rights and the jurisdiction of the court in order to properly have the ability to deport these individuals. That's not the Conservative Party's position, though. There does seem to be some ambiguity between yourself and your party leader, who leaves that option open on the table, but says more needs to be done to work through how that would be achieved. Is there a difference there between you and Kemi Badenoch?
Well, my view is well known and long-standing. Kemi has said that she is prepared to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, and she's initiated a policy process now to analyse these issues and to come to a final position. And that will no doubt happen in the course of this year.
You're a shadow minister in her shadow ministry. I mean, how can you have a different position to your party leader?
Well, I don't think our positions are so distinct, actually. I've given this a great deal of thought, have come to my own view. She also believes that we should consider leaving, in fact, that she thinks it's the most likely outcome. But she wants to initiate a policy process whereby we field other people's views, we think through the issues and then come to a settled view later in the year.
And you'll abide by that view if it's different from your current view?
Well, I hope I can persuade the party that this is the right way. And I think the argument is moving in this direction. When you saw just a couple of weeks ago Jack Straw, a former Labour Justice Secretary, Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, come to the same view as well. David Blunkett the other day came close to making the same argument. So I think politics is converging on the view that our human rights laws are completely outdated and we need to change them.
Well, you've got a British law firm now trying to use the ECHR to represent Hamas in this country, try to de-prescribe them. So that's nice, isn't it? With more of these stories coming out, yes, I'm sure the mood is shifting. Robert Jenrick, thank you very much.
You.
Shadow Justice Secretary there. Let us know your thoughts at home.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more coming in today's programme. Indeed, an army of, wait for it, 3 people, yes. That is the entire armed force division being sent to battle the Birmingham bin debacle. We're speaking to a military logistics expert to hear that after your headlines with Sam.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much and good afternoon to you. 34 minutes past 1. The top story this lunchtime, the Gambling Commission has charged 15 people in connection with alleged betting offences ahead of last year's surprise general election announcement. Among those charged is Craig Williams, the former Conservative MP, and Rishi Sunak's Parliamentary Private Secretary. Also facing charges are Russell George, a Welsh Conservative Senedd member, Anthony Lee, the former Tory Director of Campaigning, his wife Laura Saunders, and Nick Mason, the party's former Chief Data Officer. The Commission has been investigating whether bets were placed on the 4th of July election using inside knowledge before Sunak's announcement on the 22nd of May. All 15 people have been charged with cheating under the Gambling Act and are due in court at Westminster Magistrates on Friday the 13th of June. Downing Street says it's confident that vital raw materials will reach Scunthorpe Steelworks in time to keep the blast furnaces running. A shipment is already on the way and British Steel's operational teams are now assessing the furnaces, with work there underway. Pressed on what happens next, Downing Street declined to comment this lunchtime, but added it is not aware of any sabotage attempts at the site. Efforts are continuing this week to stabilise operations after emergency legislation handed the government sweeping powers to take control of the steelworks. Military logistics teams have been drafted in to help coordinate the clean-up in Birmingham, where 17,000 tonnes of waste has piled up after a month-long bin strike. Refuse workers walked out on the 11th of March, and with the city now declaring a major incident, neighbouring councils and even the army are stepping in. But soldiers won't collect the rubbish. They're helping plan the response as public health concerns grow. Workers are set to vote on a partial deal today, though the Unite Union says it's not enough to end the dispute. Former detective Maggie Oliver has launched a legal campaign to investigate whether senior officials who failed to act over the grooming gang scandal can be prosecuted. The They Knew campaign, backed by survivors from towns like Telford and Rotherham, is seeking thousands of pounds to explore civil claims or private prosecutions against councils, police and other authorities. She says if you fail to protect children, you can be legally held accountable. The move follows years of government criticism and a 2022 inquiry that called child abuse in England and Wales an epidemic. Well, survivors say it's time for consequences after decades of failure. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at 2 o'clock. Next, it's time for a short break, then back to Tom and Emily.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. The latest AI travel news from GBnews.com finds several road closures and delays affecting drivers. The A720 at Baberton Junction is restricted eastbound due to a broken down vehicle, leading to congestion on the M8. Motorists should exercise caution and allocate extra time for their journey. In West Sussex, on the A27 westbound between Chichester West and Havant, an accident involving a vehicle crossing the central reservation has closed one lane. Northamptonshire faces delays on the A14 both eastbound and westbound, with lane closures due to road traffic collisions. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, how fierce is the competition to become Lord Sugar's next business partner? Well, our final guest today has been in the throes of that competition.
Goodness me, yes. Liam Snellan is taking part in the current series of The Apprentice, and he worked as an electrician for 10 years, and now he's turning his hand to making comfortable yet fashionable workwear. So there you go.
Well, I just want to ask what it's like to be a contestant on The Apprentice, having been a fan of the show for years prior. Is it a bit weird?
Yeah, do you know what? I wouldn't say it's weird. I feel like you can manifest anything in life, you know, and over 10 years ago I said that I wanted to be on the show with no real business at the time and not knowing how I was going to do it. But as I said, I manifested it and I'm here and on the show.
You manifested it? How did you manifest it then? Go on.
Well, you just need to vision that something has already happened, you know, you just haven't attained it yet, so you just need to attain the frequency to achieve that thing, and that's obviously what I've done, and it's my time.
Liam, are you still on the show?
I am still on the show.
Make it?
So, well, you have to wait and see. You have to wait and see. Obviously,
could be the winner.
Yeah, could be. So we had a little bit of banter about a hot sauce. I was licking a plate, which was a bit embarrassing. So we was doing an advertisement for our hot sauce brand. We didn't actually have the bottle, so we needed to sort of think on our feet and make an advert without having the product.
How long are you in the boardroom? Obviously, it has to be sliced down to an hour, but you must be in there for a long time, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So obviously, you're in there a lot longer than what it shows. You know, it's such a small part of the show when really you're in there for like up to a couple of hours. So it's a really intense period. Like, they definitely go into all of the task and the good things and the bad things that happened, and then obviously the key highlights get shown to the public.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 20 minutes to 2, GB News can reveal that only 3, yes, that's 3, not 30, not 33, not 300, but 3 army personnel have been deployed to help fix Birmingham's ongoing bin crisis. And none of them are frontline soldiers.
Yes, they're actually office-based military planners who've been sent in to provide logistical support.
Well, despite the ongoing dispute that's left rubbish piling up on the city's streets, well, could it all be soon broken through? Well, the Unite Union says that striking workers are set to vote later today on a partial deal aimed at ending the all-out industrial action. OK, well, joining us now is retired British Army officer and military logistics expert, Major General Tim Cross. Who better to speak to on this? Tim, what do you make of this, hearing that they've sent 3 military logistical experts to Birmingham, to the front line, to try and help sort this all out?
Well, partly in response to how you open this, let me first of all say that every soldier is a soldier first and is prepared to fight if necessary. So there are no backstreet boys here, or planners, or, you know, separate to the front line. We're all part of the same team. And in this instance, it's not surprising what they're asking for. There are 2 types of military aid to the government. One is called MACP, military aid to the civil power, which is what we were doing in places like Northern Ireland and in helping to defeat terrorism and so forth. The other one is MAC-A, military assistance to the civil authorities, which is what this is all about. And it's not new. We've done this a lot in the past. My own brigade was involved heavily in the planning and execution of the foot and mouth disease many years ago. We've had soldiers involved in fuel strikes, fire strikes, prison strikes, all sorts of stuff over the years. Now, in this particular case, nobody seems to be suggesting that we're putting soldiers on the streets to move all this rubbish. I think what's happening, and I hadn't heard the figure of 3 actually, but I think what's happening is that we're putting a small team in to help with command and control and to also do the planning for how this thing can be resolved or dealt with once there is some sort of agreement. Or maybe doing the planning too for looking at the options available if this thing carries on and there is no agreement. And then maybe the government will have to bring in, more soldiers to help move the stuff. So it's a relatively small team, but they're well versed in how to do the planning. They are logistic guys, and they will be able to come up with various options for helping the Birmingham City Council deal with this problem.
I mean, a very, very small team, but I suppose this is going to be a piece of work that is done saying, OK, this is how you proceed from here. I suppose that doesn't need to be a big team, but my goodness me, has it been overblown over the weekend in the papers, suggesting that the army is going to be sort of called in? I mean, this is hardly calling in the army. This is perhaps soliciting the services of a consultant army officer in order to then see what goes on next.
Yeah, well, I think there's some truth in that. I mean, one of the old maxims is that I was taught many years ago by a very senior military guy, is that the media's like the weather. You just got to learn to put up with it. So the headlines that hit you on a Saturday morning are changed by Saturday lunchtime, and then by Monday morning, where we are, the whole thing looks completely differently. Which is why one shouldn't really react too strongly to the initial headlines.
I mean,
but yeah, it is what it is, and as I say, they will add value. I've got no doubt about that. I mean, without in all seriousness, these guys are serious logistic planners. They will offer some real value.
But Tim Cross, this isn't what the army are there to do, is it? I mean, if I were a soldier, and I'm not a soldier, so I'm not speaking from experience at all, but I would assume I'd be a bit miffed by all this. I mean, I'm sorry, sort out your own bin strike, Birmingham City Council. I'm a soldier. I'm here to defend this country from outside threats and from other, external issues, not to sort out the bins.
Well, I can understand that perspective, but I don't think it's true. I mean, at the end of the day, the military is part of defence and security. And what's happening here is there is a secure issue. I mean, there's a health issue apart from anything else, and all sorts of other things too. And most soldiers, to be honest, don't mind getting involved in this sort of thing at all. I mentioned earlier on, the fuel strikes, the prison strikes, and so on. It's actually good training, gets you out and about, good command and control for young officers to do this sort of stuff. The thing that does irritate soldiers, I might add, is when we're doing this on the basis that people are going on strike for money, and the soldiers who are helping clear up the mess are being paid less than the people who are on strike.
Very good point.
And that has not been unusual in the past, I have to tell you. So I don't know what the issue is over pay and how much people are being paid or not being paid, but that's the only thing really that would irritate guys and girls who are helping out with this. But it's it is part of who we are. We're paid for the nation. Yes, of course, we're there to fight fight the king's enemies around the world, but also we're here to help the government deal with problems where there's anything to do with security and safety.
It's such a good point that of course, these
very reasonable, Tim
striking
Cross.
bin workers are all striking for a certain grade of job that's being abolished from a council that is literally bankrupt. Where the council tax rise is the highest in the country, where they're having to find savings across the board, and these strikes seem just completely tone deaf to the dire straits that Birmingham Council is in. And I suppose, at the very least, having the army come in and actually do the work, likely for less than the bin men, for some of these people, if indeed...
Well, I don't know that.
If indeed we do get armed forces personnel shifting bins, which we don't yet have at this stage, I mean, that does just show a different level of service.
Well, Tim Cross, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your input. Really interesting. Retired British Army officer, military logistics expert, Major General Tim Cross, and that's why he's a Major General and I am not, because far more reasonable about the duties of army soldiers.
Now, we should say that Unite's General Secretary Sharon Graham has had her word. She said that whilst it's helpful for the government to realise after weeks that they have a role in this dispute, the constant attacks and briefings against these low-paid bin workers is frankly a disgrace. Of course, these workers are in the driving seat around what they wish to accept. Indeed, there's another ballot happening by close of play on Monday. Unite backs these workers 100%.
Yes, and the government have also issued a statement saying the government has already provided a number of staff to support the council with logistics and make sure the response on the ground is swift to address the associated public health risks. In light of the ongoing public health risk, a small number of office-based military personnel with operational planning expertise have been made available to Birmingham City Council to further support in this area.
Well, if you're in search of some holiday sun, perhaps you want to get away from the stench of bins. Well, here are your top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. After the very wet weather over the weekend across parts of the Canaries, it's turning a little bit dry here as we move into next week. Still some showers around here though on Tuesday, but the main area of wet weather will be across parts of Iberia, France and Italy, where we could see some flash flooding in places. But for Greece and Turkey, plenty of sunshine here, and as we see out the week, temperatures for most here should climb into the low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. A bit of a messy day out there today. There's some heavy rain around, even a bit of thunder mixed in. Not everyone will see it. Towards the southeast, a greater chance of staying dry because you're further away from the low pressure centres, but elsewhere we're heavily under the influence of low pressure and various fronts pushing their way in. As a result, we have some fairly persistent rain affecting some western parts of Wales, southwest England and into the northwest of England and pushing into the borders areas as well. Elsewhere, a fair few showers around, but just like I said, towards the southeast, a greater chance of staying dry and some warmth here still, high teens for some places. Elsewhere, with a lot of cloud around and especially in the rain, it is going to feel markedly fresher than it did this time last week. But then as we go into this evening, staying with that pretty messy picture, further showers across many parts of Scotland with some more persistent rain feeding into eastern parts, Aberdeenshire, as we go through this evening. Showers to end the day, even some bright clear spells across parts of Northern Ireland, but still this front lingering down across parts of northwest England through western Wales and towards the southwest. Some heavy persistent rain mixed in with this. Further east, always dry for a time, but as we go overnight, I am expecting a few more showers to develop and push their way into some southeastern parts. And again, these could be quite heavy and possibly thundery as we go through the early hours of tomorrow as well. Otherwise, and where you don't get the wet weather, there will be some clear skies around Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland. A touch of frost is possible, but most places a milder start than we saw through much of last week. Otherwise then, through Tuesday, we have some further heavy persistent rain pushing in, particularly across parts of the southwest. Devon, Cornwall likely to have an increasingly wet day, also western parts of Wales. Elsewhere, a fair few showers around and only limited bright or sunny spells. But if you do get any sunshine, not feeling too bad. High teens in the southeast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 2, and it's almost launch time for 6 trailblazing women to make space history. And yes, the singer Katy Perry is one of them.
Yes, that's Katy Perry there on your screen if you're watching, and she's showing off the whatever that is.
It's the New Shepard capsule.
Right, she's showing off that. She's saying how she's always dreamt of this experience. So from pop royalty to rocket science, this all-female crew is set to soar above Earth in a Blue Origin capsule led by Jeff Bezos' fiancée, Lauren Sanchez.
This is quite exciting. It's space tourism.
Oh, yes.
So there will not be any science done on board. This is just for the thrill of it, but also for the pretty profound moment of looking down on Earth. We're looking at live pictures here of the launch site in Texas. I'm not sure which one's Katy Perry and which one's Lauren Sanchez. They all seem quite far away from this drone shot, but we can see them live preparing to get up that launch tower and in to that rocket.
Right, should we get some thoughts of astronomer Mark Thompson, who's with us? Mark, this is very exciting, at least as an education tool.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's wonderful to see people that we're familiar with appearing in conversations and news stories about space, because it starts to make it a bit more accessible for people rather than just trained astronauts who've gone through phenomenal amounts of training and selection.
Call our BE3 engine.
Oh, I think we might have lost Mark for a moment, but we just saw... Mark, we were just looking at the live pictures from Texas, seeing the rocket come out. It's all very exciting, clearly lots of people involved. What experience might they expect up there?
Well, do you know what? It's not going to be... They're going to be lifting off to an altitude of about just over 100 kilometres, which is the internationally recognised border between the atmosphere and space. But they'll only actually be up there for a total of 11 minutes. So they'll experience weightlessness. They'll get to see the curvature of Earth from space. But if it's me and I was having a space experience, I'd kind of want it to last a bit more than 11 minutes, I think.
This is, of course, a pretty profound moment, not just because it's an all-women space mission, which I believe is the first all-female mission since 1963. Pretty extraordinary.
What happened in 1963? Why was there an all-female team going up then, Mark? Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was the first female in space. There's only one Russian lady, Valentina Tereshkova, was the first lady in space in 1963. And since then, we've not had an all-female crew. So absolutely, it's an exciting moment.
Yeah, and pretty profound because this is the first time that someone of the fame and perhaps reach of Katy Perry is going up there. This is going to be a whole new generation of young people learning about space. It's a pretty exciting time in space exploration.
To make space accessible and commercialisation of space flight by way of getting people, and bear in mind, none of these people have any clue how to fly the thing. They're just there as they're there for the ride. So absolutely, it's starting to make it more accessible for everybody.
And why is Texas the place? Do you know, Mark?
Oh, it's just one of the launch facilities that Bezos is using. There are a number of launch facilities around the world. In fact, there's going to be some in the UK in the not-too-distant future. So there's just a number of places where the infrastructure's there and the weather conditions
we can
are favourable.
see, sorry to interrupt, we can just see the ladies, the women, the fabulous 6, is it?
And the shining back of the head of Jeff Bezos there, I believe.
Is that
standing
Jeff?
in the middle. He, of course, isn't going up there.
Yeah, so they'll be going through their last briefing moments just before they head up to the capsule. Fortunately, they haven't got stairs to climb. It's quite a way up to the top, and there is a lift for them to use. But yeah, they'll be getting the last bits of safety briefing from the crew or from the safety team before they head up there to the capsule. Very exciting, and I imagine the nerves are going to be tingling away by now.
Now, of course, we've got a spaceport in, I think it's Orkney, and also one down in Cornwall. But there are different types of launches that matter more depending on where you are geographically. This is just a sort of hop straight up in the air and straight back down. So I suppose this one can be done pretty much anywhere on Earth. But if you're doing an orbital launch, it's usually better to be nearer the equator, if I'm not mistaken, which is why the south tip of Texas or the south tip of Florida tend to be where the Americans launch their rockets from.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge number of things that need to be considered. You're absolutely right. This is just a mere hop. They're just going to hop up into space, say be there for about 11 minutes and come down again. So it's not going to take long. But what you don't want is their capsule coming down into a sort of the centre of a city, because it just comes down under parachute, no control other than the parachute slowing its descent. So they tend to have these kind of experiences will be launched from fairly remote places of the Earth. But you're right. If you're heading up into particular orbits, then you generally will be placed into a launch facility somewhere near the equator.
This is quite surreal. It feels like we're watching a reality TV show or an episode of Black Mirror or something. I was watching that last night. But yes, as Katy Perry, she said they're going to put the ass into astronauts. I'm not sure what that means. Is that a reference to their tight outfits? I don't know, Mark. I won't ask you that question. But she does say it will encourage other women, or at least she hopes it will, not least her daughter, to shoot for the stars. So this is very much being framed as a girl power, proving that there are no limits for women. And I must say, not that this is important, but they do all look quite glamorous for astronauts.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to do wonders for getting women into the space project, getting young girls interested in space exploration and STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. It's going to do wonders for trying to get more women and girls into the industry.
Why are they dinging that bell? What's that? Do you know, Mark?
It's a tradition that all astronauts go through. Do you know what? I don't actually know. It's one of the things I couldn't tell you.
Oh, sorry.
But no, it's absolutely fine. Just one of the things about science is there's so much stuff we learn that there's other bits you don't know. But it's one of the things that all astronauts do before they head off into space is they ring a bell. I've got no idea. I'll be Googling it later.
Apparently it's just a ceremonial thing. It's just a tradition.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's not something. It'll be based in sort of some sort of traditional experience in some way. Quite why it's there, I've got no idea. But there's no scientific or official benefit to it whatsoever. It's just a ceremonial thing.
But this is, of course, the sort of battle of the billionaires, in a way. You've got this space company called Blue Origin, owned by Jeff Bezos, slightly less famous, slightly less large than SpaceX, which, of course, is owned by Elon Musk. But this is almost a bit of a side project of Blue Origin here, this entirely sort of tourist-type rocket, the New Shepard, that just goes straight up, straight back down again, just for tourism. They're also working on a much larger rocket called the New Glenn, which I suppose doing lots of tourism with this smaller rocket helps fund and helps sort of explore the science behind it all. But it's the bigger rocket that Blue Origin's working on that could be more profound for our future amongst the stars.
Yeah, absolutely. Both Blue Origin and SpaceX, they're both making tremendous efforts to not only increase our launch capability, and SpaceX particularly have been very helpful and useful for the American Space Agency, NASA, in getting people up to the International Space Station. So, and same for Blue Origin, are working in the same area. But let's not forget that commercialisation, getting fair-paying passengers into space, is going to be a massive industry. If we can make space accessible and make it something that people can actually, normal people can afford, not just the likes of Katy Perry, then there is a massive industry. Think about the tourism around the world. If you can start to increase tourism into space, there is a massive industry to be held. So they'll be keeping an eye on the dollar signs there as well.
So do you reckon, OK, so I'm 32 at the moment, Mark. So do you reckon that in my lifetime I might get a trip up there for the price of, what we're paying currently for a long-haul flight?
First of all, let me say you don't look it, of course.
Well, thank you, Mark.
But, do you know what? I can see it happening within the next 10, 15 years. I wouldn't be at all surprised if those prices start to come down really quickly now. Quite how long? I reckon, 10, 15, 20 years, I reckon we'll start to see it being something a little bit more realistic for normal people.
I mean, the price of getting a kilogram down to orbit 15 years ago was $65,000. It's now $1,500.
Wow.
I mean, the complete collapse in the price of getting a kilo to space, mainly because we don't throw away the rockets so much anymore. I mean, the Falcon 9, that SpaceX sort of workhorse rocket, they fly them so many times, dozens of times per rocket, because they can land them again. This is the innovation that the private sector has really brought into the space field.
Yeah, absolutely, and reusable rockets. Now, we saw it first with some elements of the space shuttle that were reusable. So that was really the first time we really, as a species, went into reusable rocket technology. But because Blue Origin and SpaceX are doing remarkable work with these boosters that can land again and be reused. And it costs, just a few years ago, it was costing like £250,000 to get up into space. It's not far off that at the moment, but that price will, without any doubt in my mind, it will come down in the not too distant future to hopefully be something that we can all at some point start to think about affording.
And this is all in the context not just of these little hops up into space, but perhaps these giant leaps for mankind that we're going to see maybe within this decade. It's the NASA plans still, by the end of the decade, to get a man and a woman on the moon for the first time since 1973. Or is it 1972? December 1972. That's my pub trivia fact.
That's right.
Well done.
It is extraordinary that we haven't been back to the moon for 50 years, more than 50 years. But it could be that by the end of this decade, we really do get boots back on another surface, on another sort of celestial body.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, back to the days of the Apollo missions, there was this very massive political space race to get the first Americans, the first Russians into space, and there was a big political drive behind that. That political drive went as soon as people had got to the moon, and the Apollo mission only lasted about a decade, give or take, which is under a decade. So that political driver had gone, and you know what? It's expensive getting people to the moon, and governments have got other things to be spending money on, like healthcare and education, all those sorts of things. So it's very difficult for governments to justify the cost of space exploration. Put it into the private sector, and all of a sudden you've got Elon Musk and you've got Jeff Bezos, both big players in the space industry, trying to assist and push forward space exploration still. And now big players in those next steps, such as the Artemis project, as you mentioned, to get people back on the moon, and ultimately within the next 10, 15 years, 20 years, off to Mars as well, which would be wonderful to watch.
And Mark, not to put a downer on things, but presumably there are risks associated with this.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, you're strapping yourself to a massive explosive thing. There are risks. Those risks are pretty well calculated these days. And there were lots and lots of test flights without human beings on board, with just payloads of dummies in cars. In the case of Elon Musk, because remember, he put one of his Teslas into space.
Yeah, it's still orbiting somewhere between us and Mars.
Yeah, it's still out there somewhere. So there's been a huge amount of safety testing, and I think before we start getting people on there like fare-paying passengers, things are pretty safe now, although it doesn't come without any risk.
Dave, there are some sarcastic comments coming into the inbox.
Oh, no.
Asking about whether fillers and implants might be affected by zooming up into the stratosphere like this.
The G-force.
By the G-force,
or the zero gravity.
I don't know if you know an answer to that, Mark.
Well, do you know what? I would say have a word with your GP, not being a medical professional. But do you know what? People don't worry when they go on fairground rides. Now, it's only a little bit more acceleration you feel on a rocket than you feel on some fairground rides. I think they'll probably be okay, but I would say if you're worried, speak to your doctor.
That's very good advice, as always. We are, of course, looking at live pictures here in the run-up to this extraordinary launch, the first all-female cruise since 1963, in what is really a new era of space exploration. And we were just saying, of course, that this is a privately funded, privately driven operation. There's no government money that has gone into this, and this is perhaps the dawn of a new age of space tourism.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. The drivers have changed. We've got to a stage now where people with a lot of money in the world are looking to make more money through commercialisation of space, and everyone that's going into space now, as in the Katy Perrys of the world, and the 5 other ladies on the trip, they'll be paying for these tickets, and it's just the beginning of what will be an interesting journey over the next few years.
There are some plans to turn the International Space Station into an international space hotel once it's decommissioned from sort of joint American and Russian operation in the coming years, and I mean, that is due to happen by the end of the decade, if I'm not mistaken. Could we be seeing the International Space Station station turned over to private investors and a sort of constantly orbiting space hotel being in operation in the not too distant future?
Yeah, I think its future is still uncertain because it costs to maintain something like the space station. But I think there's absolutely discussions and plans, albeit sketch plans at the moment, to get space hotels in orbit around the Earth. And I think that will be something that comes. Quite when, I don't know, but I think that will be something come. Whether the space station will be part of that, I don't know. I suspect it will be easier to launch something new that's been designed for the purpose rather than rely on the space station, which has been there for a good few decades now and is not really designed for that purpose.
And Mark, a lot of people care deeply about the climate change and the environment. Some questioning whether this will fit in with some of these celebrities' opinions on the climate change. Do these sorts of things produce huge amounts of carbon emissions?
Well, do you know what? There's no doubt that, yes, they do a little bit, and it's actually more from the industry that supports the space exploration, but quite often, depending on the fuel that's being used, but quite often the plume of what people class or expect to be smoke is actually just droplets of water that you see when a rocket launches. But there's far more pollution coming from other industries like the production of concrete than there is from space exploration. I'll be honest, if I thought for 1 minute that stopping space exploration would solve the world's problems, including the environment, I would be the first person to sign my name on the top of a petition, but I don't think it will. I think there's other things we can do first that will improve it. And, you know, we're human beings, we want to explore, and I think that's really important.
It's the Kardashians. Well, it's the Kardashians currently on screen. That is Kris Jenner, the momager, and Khloe Kardashian. So, Mark, it's a good point to leave you. Thank you very much indeed for all your expertise and for following along with us. Mark Thompson there, who is an astronomer.
I'm very impressed by your Kardashian spotting. I would have no clue.
Well, I'm a millennial female, aren't I? So I know these types of things.
Well, let's go to
don't know what that says about me.
No, perhaps not. But let's go to our resident Kardashian expert, of course. No, I'm joking. It's our space expert, Andy Lound, coming on the line now. Andy, thanks for joining us. I promise I won't ask you any questions about the Kardashians, but I will ask you a question about Jeff Bezos. I mean, he has poured a lot of money into this project, and this is sort of becoming the battle of the billionaires.
Yes, thank you for having me on this big day. Yes, it is. I mean, who'd have thought I'd have come onto a programme, a SpaceX...
Oh, Andy, we're just going to interrupt you because we're just going to listen in to see if the Jenners and the Kardashians have anything to add to this discussion.
She's writing us because she was supposed to be here with us, and she's studying for law school, so she had a big test that she had to take. Again, something I'm very proud of, but she just keeps calling, going, I have such FOMO, tell me every minute of it. So it's very inspirational and just super proud of the girls, every one of them. And it's a very brave thing to do, and I think it also just says something like Khloe said to my 13 grandchildren. Yeah.
And what can you say to that too, for your children?
Oh, I just think it's really whatever you dream of it is in our reach, especially in today's day and age. And dream big, wish for the stars, and one day you could maybe be amongst them.
That's so beautiful. And just before I send it back, any last messages to the astronauts before they take off?
I think just great luck. Be present. I mean, I'm so excited. I love the messaging that we keep receiving from the staff here at Blue Origin is don't film it through your phones, look through your eyes, be as present as possible. They will supply all the content that we need and to give to our families, but I love just being in the moment.
Yeah, same.
And we're gonna...
Excited.
Yeah, we're so excited. We're gonna be in the moment too here. We're gonna send it back to you guys.
You know, beautiful insight from Kris Jenner and Khloe Kardashian, experienced astronauts themselves. No, they're not. They're not. But they're there to support women, clearly. Should we bring Andy Lound back in, who is a space expert? Andy, sorry to interrupt you there for that girl power speech there from Kris Jenner. But Andy, tell us a bit more about just about this as a flight, as a rocket space launch.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, the Bezos has been an interesting character, of course. He's developed, he was a multi-billionaire. He's been able to take his interest of space and actually put it into practical formation by building this spacecraft or developing a company to build spacecraft to take people on suborbital flights, hence it's called New Shepard. Shepard was the first American astronaut in a suborbital flight, first American in space. And the idea is then, of course, that you can have an autonomous system where the main vehicle actually lands back again, so it's reusable. That itself is quite astounding. And the top section can have people sitting in a circle on the spacecraft and just sit there and go for a ride, which is, I find quite staggering, really, when you're considering the efforts back in the early 1960s when astronauts were being put up. Now they're actually doing it as a tourist thing. And it is quite an interesting step, because this step, of course, raises money for the company, which then it plows back into the company, which can be used then for orbital spacecraft, which of course is developing, to get involved in very, very serious space exploration and space commercial activities.
Are you suggesting, Andy Lound, that this isn't the most serious of space explorations, the 11-minute flight to just above what's known as the Kármán line? I mean, this is going to be a short flight for these individuals, but it will be very, very meaningful for them.
For them individually, any flight like this will be meaningful for the individuals. I mean, apart from a couple of them, because a couple of them are actually quite involved in the kind of ex-NASA scientists there. But someone like Katy Perry, who, as far as I know, has no previous interest in spaceflight, it's very good for PR and publicity. But this is the spin-off from it, is her personal experience of flying so high above the Earth, finding herself technically into space, will be quite influential to her personally. She will suddenly realise something about herself, she will feel something that people like me, since I was age of 5 years old, were desperate to try and experience. But she will actually do that. And when she comes back, she'll probably have a different perspective on life, her life, the Earth itself, which she'll be able to look down upon. And that may influence her in her art that she actually does, her music, which would be always a good thing. It's always good when art is stimulated through these science as well, because the two actually come together. So that's quite important. Well, that's really important. Remember, Alexei Leonov, the cosmonaut who was the first man to walk in space, was also an artist, and he had the first artwork flown in space when he was his artwork was flown on the Mir space station. So it's nothing unusual where art can actually react to this. And I think that's quite important, because they'll be able to transmit the human feeling. Because space exploration, we all talk about the cold science of it, which is important. I love the cold science of it. But at the same time, this is a human experience of humans leaving their planet. And that's something which is quite spectacular. And I think artists that fly up might be able to convey that in a way that scientists probably can't. Could you imagine someone like Lord Byron or Shelley experiencing the way they would express that? And that would obviously stimulate the public. And I think for public relations for spaceflight, I mean, I've been promoting space science since I was 7 years old, trying to push that against opposition, I have to say, in this country. A lot of people really against promoting spaceflight.
Yes.
But now we've got the artists like these people going up there, they'll actually generate a real interest into this. And we're desperate to get more young people involved in space science, going into the sciences, which will benefit humankind, rather than doing things that will be degenerative to humankind, which unfortunately is happening quite a lot.
It is actually such a sad story in Britain, our story of spaceflight. We were a launch-capable country.
Yeah.
I think we were the third country in the history of humanity to launch an orbital-class rocket. And we are the only country in the history of the world to have gained that capability and then given it all up due to cost.
Well, there's a lot of issues over this. Typical government committees run by civil servants decided there would no cost effectiveness in launching satellites because there wouldn't be enough of them being launched. Terribly narrow-minded. But I mean, I remember in the 1980s promoting work of the space shuttle, strangely enough, telling people about, isn't it exciting, we could do science on the space shuttle, send up doctors. I've been physically attacked twice, I've been abused by well-known scientists in this country. If they're out there watching in, remember, being abused by these people, the establishment, academia, attacking me for promoting a subject that said you shouldn't be doing that. It's not important.
Is that because there was the big environmental movement of the 1970s and 1980s? Is that because people thought, you know, you've got to do more stuff on Earth and that it's just wasteful of resources and of energy? What was the reason that sort of space has been so attacked by so many people for so long?
They seem to want to, the reason why they were attacking is all these people, because we're more interested in nuclear physics, more interested in interstellar astronomy, and didn't want wasted money sending humans or robotic probes anywhere else. They really were based on it is where their science was based, and their science wasn't based on exploring planets or sending humans into space, so they saw no point to doing it. They were worried about losing their budgets for that, when it really, everybody should have been working together, which should have been the big key to actually do that. And unfortunately, that wasn't the period at the time. I mean, it was quite a stress. I have to say, I must write a book about it one day, because people just would not believe the hassle that was actually caused by
Andy, I can imagine, but I must put the sceptical view across, just because there are some people who are getting in touch at the moment saying that this is just a pointless, expensive PR stunt for both Bezos and these 6 women who are already celebrities, and it's just a big show of extraordinary wealth and privilege, Andy.
Well, yes, there is. I mean, at the present moment in time, only the wealthy can actually afford to take these flights. That's the way it goes. But that's how it was with commercial airline flights in the 1930s. Only the extremely wealthy could bother to do them. I don't think people in the late 1960s, when they started their package holidays to Spain, worried about that too much, of where they'd actually got to. And it has to start somewhere. And I think publicity-wise, it's quite good to show this technology is working. You have to have technology. Someone has to fund the technology. Governments can no longer afford it anymore. So it's got to come from the private sector. So to make it work, they've got to commercialise it. And if this is what funds this new technology, which is very useful. And I thought Mark made a very good comment, especially when you asked the question about the environment. Most rockets, of course, are hydrogen and oxygen fueled vehicles, and those that aren't use methane, which methane is mostly hydrogen anyway, and therefore they're less pollutant than actually commercial airline travel. I think we did a calculation once, because I think the King, King made a complaint about these kind of things, and I think we actually did a calculation and found that commercial rocket flights are 80,000 times less pollutant than commercial airline traffic, when itself was 100,000 times less than motor cars.
That's extraordinary. So someone taking a transatlantic flight could have a bigger carbon footprint than Katy Perry achieves today.
Yes, that's including the building of the aircraft, the ground services, as well as the flight itself. Absolutely right. Totally agree with that, yes.
Well, yeah, but I mean, some would argue that flying somewhere is probably more useful than this type of stunt.
What, to go on holiday?
Yeah.
This is just a holiday. It's an 11-minute holiday.
It's an 11-minute holiday. Yeah. No, I'm all for it, to be honest. I mean, it is good press for this type of space travel. It would be fantastic if more children thought that they could get involved in this type of science and potentially be the future. I don't know all the possibilities of what we could learn from space travel. But, Andy, you're probably right that the more people know about it, the more people see that it can be done, the more interest and the more money will go into it.
It is, and of course, the great spin-offs from that. I mean, we look at the news today with rockets being used to bomb people. Well, this is the use of the same sort of technology being used for peaceful purposes, and it's the same old sort of story that you can use it for one thing or the other. And this, you need to get good PR to actually do this, because eventually you're going to have, whether you like it or not, whoever's out there complaining or not, what our future will be to leave this planet. We are a species that wants to expand, and if we are to survive as a species, we will need to use the resources that are in the solar system, whether it's mining the asteroids, mining the moon, and exploring our natural curiosity. If you haven't got natural curiosity, then you really shouldn't be around at all, really. You've got to be out there and want to know what's behind the next horizon, and that's what all this is really about. In fact, these people will take the flight and look down on the Earth and open their minds to it. I remember a senator in the United States who took a flight on the space shuttle. He actually allocated funds for the space shuttle, and he was fairly skeptical of the space program until he got into space, and then he suddenly realized something it hadn't dawned on him before. The Earth doesn't have border lines on it. It doesn't have names scattered across it. He suddenly saw it for what it was, a planet with human beings living on it. And that was a very important change of attitude, which was really important. And the more people's attitudes can change towards a planet and a species, rather than individual countries, the better we will actually be and start getting on with each other a little bit.
And this is a fascinating effect that has been well documented in history, of people that have actually gone up into space and looked down at what has been called since the 1990s the pale blue dot. And that vision of Earth, where you stand so separate from it and you look down, and everyone you have ever met in your life, everything that has ever happened throughout recorded history, every meeting, every war, every love affair, I mean, it's just all there. It's sort of in that one space that you can just see. And this is a documented effect, that it really changes people's perspective on how to approach life.
It is. You've paraphrased Carl Sagan's comment extremely well there, when the Voyager spacecraft looked back towards the sun and photographed the planets, and you saw the Earth actually inside a band of dust in space, which was kind of weird, really, to see it like that. And you're absolutely right. Everything you've ever known was is up on that little pale blue dot. And we are space travelers. We're space travelers on a planet which is actually quite fragile. And this is where the science of all this becomes really important, to teach people about how to live and to operate. Remember, living in space means you have to have clean technology. You have to have clean activities to actually do that. And that's where the technology comes down. The hydrogen fuel cell, for instance, which I'm always a big pusher of. So I'm biased towards it. That was developed in the UK by Francis Bacon, and in Birmingham we've got Dr. Michaela Kendall, the leading hydrogen expert in this country, struggling to get her voice heard against all the naysayers.
Andy, it looks like a beautiful day in Texas, as it is often. Does the weather on Earth matter for these types of launches?
Yes.
And also,
yes.
oh, sorry, and second question, Andy, who's driving this rocket?
A great deal of this is autonomous, which makes this quite remarkable. There is no space flight engineer or expert sitting in that spacecraft to do controls. It is a fairly autonomous thing. Ground controllers has always been monitor it. Remember, it is a suborbital flight, so it's a fairly straightforward thing. It lifts up, and after 2 minutes 40 seconds or so, the top capsule will separate, and the main booster will come back down and land back onto the ground, and they will coast then, doing an arc where they'll then fall back through the atmosphere, and then the parachutes will open, and they'll drop, hopefully, to a nice, safe landing. So it's a fairly autonomous flight. In fact, very similar. Those people have got their Estes model rockets out there. All the brands are available, of course, but their Estes rockets are out there, where you actually launch them in the park, and the capsule separates and then parachutes back down again. Very similar to that, only slightly more sophisticated.
And the weather conditions, they do matter.
Yes, they do. Crosswinds are very important, so the computer systems on board can compensate for any crosswinds with the weather. You want to avoid lightning and thunderstorms, matters like that. Apollo 12 got hit by lightning a couple of times during its lift up, and they decided they wouldn't do that anymore because it caused some fun. But yes, you want a nice, clear, still day. Obviously, wind speeds vary higher up in the atmosphere.
Okay, Andy, we're just going to interrupt you to hear from Oprah Winfrey live there in Texas.
And I have never been more proud of my friend than today. Never been more proud, because this is bigger than just going to space. I mean, I think for her, who anytime we're on a flight, she's in anybody's lap if there's the slightest bit of turbulence, has like real anxiety flying, and this is overcoming a wall of fear, a barrier. It's I think it's going to be cathartic in so many ways for her.
She told us that she was surprised that you told her to do it. Why did you want her to do this?
Because I think life is about continuing to grow into the best of yourself and the fullest expression of yourself. And I think that this is one of the most fullest expressions you can possibly have. And I know that I felt deeply that she would regret it. And I didn't want to hear about it for the next 15 years. I wish I had gone, you know, and I said, there's only one time that all the women are going up for the first time. Right. You know, there will be other trips, but there's only one first time.
Incredible.
So to be a pioneer is great.
What was the last conversation you had with her?
I said, peace be still. Hold the God's unchanging hand. He's got your back. That's it.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
it.
I know that we're counting down here. We're getting excited for that go for launch moment. How are you feeling as her best friend?
I feel so calm. I don't think I've ever been more calm, because I think it's already done. Once she said yes, once she committed to yes, and Lord, did we all hear, should I do it? Should I do it? Since Thanksgiving, we've been talking about it. And so once she finally said yes, I was like, okay, we're going. It's a go.
You know what I have loved is her vulnerability, because she's the voice of a lot of us that would be afraid, and she's okay to talk about being afraid. Why has that been so important to show that part?
I think, you know, for every woman who's on this flight, it's about fulfilling something within themselves. For Gail, it's about overcoming this great fear and also stepping into the moment of excitement. And I think, you know, it goes beyond this moment of just going up in space. I think this will be an everlasting experience. I was just thinking this morning, you know, Gail has been there for me for hundreds of events. I can't even remember them, you know, but you will never forget this day. None of us will ever forget this day.
Well, thank you for being here, for her, for us. I mean, this is just, it's a historic day, and it's only fitting that you are here front and center as a ray of sunshine that you are, Miss Oprah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oprah Winfrey talking about her best friend, Gayle King. Now, Gayle King is a news presenter on CBS. She presents CBS This Morning over on the other side of the pond. But she's there at the top of that New Shepard Blue Origin rocket.
Oh, that must be scary.
Ready to launch into space. Andy Lound, the space expert, is still with us. Andy, Gayle King, and I know that this is probably a little bit rude to talk about a woman's age, but she is 70 years old. That's pretty extraordinary for someone flying up into space today.
You would say that originally, but once you're generally healthy, I mean, the launches that actually, the stresses on the body now are no more than some of the biggest fairground rides that you're actually doing. So some of the bigger ones are actually give you more G-force stress than actually rocket launches. So as long as you're fairly healthy, you should be able to actually do it. Remember, William Shatner flew into space, of course. He's a lot older than that. And he came back quite successfully. And of course, John Glenn flew on the space shuttle when he was a lot older, making his second space flight, first American to fly into orbit, of course. And that was done as a particularly test on an older person to see how they would do. Because bearing in mind, if we are going to fly into space and work in space, you're going to need experienced people up there. It's no good just sending 17, 18-year-olds up, because they're going to have no experience to do anything, and that's no good. Experience is critical here. So you need people with experience and knowledge to be up there. That usually means you're going to have to be older people who have to actually fly up there. So it is quite important that that is actually demonstrated. It's very important, of course, because I want to fly. I try and get there in time.
No, it's interesting you mentioned John Glenn there, the first American to orbit the Earth, because that's the naming structure of these rockets in Blue Origin. We're looking at the New Shepard rocket on our screen now. That's named after Alan Shepard, who was the first American in space. There is also a rocket, a much bigger rocket that Blue Origin, the company, is working on, called the New Glenn rocket, named after John Glenn, and that will be the sort of orbital class vehicle that could get Americans up into orbit, perhaps to the moon and beyond.
That's right, yes. There's always a very clever naming system. I think it's very suitable. It's nice to actually be able to do that, so you end up with this constant history of doing that. Of course, we've already got Elon Musk's vehicles already flying into orbit and doing incredible work. So this is the second tier of private companies, if you like, to really go for it. And that's going to be necessary if you're going to have a bit of competition like this. And in fact, not just simply competition, but complementary. That will actually help companies putting satellites up, because you'll have one type of spacecraft, one type of satellite being launched by one type of rocket and another one by a different one. So it's going to be horses for courses on this, and I think that's a good thing, a really good thing, because after all, I mean, when you go on, when you have trucks driving down the road, you have a big truck when you're going to take heavy gear, and a different type of truck when you're doing something else, and it's the same thing with space. So I think this is brilliant.
Andy, we're starting to get close-ups of the rocket ship, and also all the people who are working behind the scenes to make sure it takes off smoothly and safely. So that indicates to me, at least, that we may well be about to see the rocket take off.
T-minus 2:30,
Fantastic
2:26,
stuff.
2:25. We're really only just over 2 minutes away from this launch now.
Yes, it looks very exciting indeed, Andy.
Pretty good. This is the critical point now where you see the topping up to keep the pressure filled in those tanks to make sure the pressure is absolutely bang on. Pressure is everything. If it drops slightly, then they'll have to abandon it. So that's really critical to keep that topping up going. You'll see a bit of venting sometimes, and that's because the pressure is bang on. The arms are coming away now, so now the rocket will be standing there. This is really, really exciting now. This is the sky. Look at those windows, by the way. So look at the view you can actually have. Far better than
amazing. Andy, do you wish you were on there? Do you wish you were on there, Andy?
Oh, yeah, totally, absolutely. I would go now. I would, no question at all. I'd love a ride like this. It's absolutely be the ride of your life. Think of it, being in space.
No, it's so exciting. And looking at the size of those windows compared to the tiny little portholes that the Apollo 11 astronauts would have had. I mean, things really have come on leaps and bounds. I must say we are now below 90 seconds, just 1 minute and 20 seconds until this launch takes off. The arm there has withdrawn to the tower. There's still some connecting tubes and gizmos, but they will surely drop away away as this rocket flies up in what is now just 1 minute's time. This is the first all-women crew that is of a multiple people. Of course, there has been an all-female crew before, but that was just one woman, the first Russian cosmonaut to go up into space. The first female, of course, that was back in 1963. But this, the first crew of multiple women and the first American team there too. So we're going to have a look at this rocket in now just 35 seconds to launch. This, of course, the Blue Origin New Shepard rocket developed by the billionaire Jeff Bezos. There he is. His wife, of course, or his fiancée, I should say, Lauren Sanchez, on board leading this mission. Also on board, Katy Perry, the famous pop singer, Gayle King, the news presenter over in the United States, as well as other women too. This is 12 seconds to launch now. We're going to be shutting up now to listen to this extraordinary moment in American history.
5, 4, command engine start, 2, 1, ignition. Liftoff. New Shepard has cleared the tower. Begin throttle down for Q limiting. Engine response looks good.
We are 1 minute into the flight now. Everything has been smooth this far. The systems are looking normal, and there we can see getting smaller and smaller. That crew of 6 flying up to over 100 kilometres in the air, beyond what's known as the internationally recognised Kármán line, that edge of space where nothing but a rocket ship can reach. Well, still with us is Andy Lound, the space expert, who's been watching what has been an incredibly smooth launch so far, Andy.
From the nozzle end of it, you saw how clean that burn is. That's what you get when you burn hydrogen and oxygen together, and you just get water droplets coming out of that. So that's really, really nice. So it's a really clean launch. Very nice flight plan, which seems to be going there. It seems to be going perfectly down the line, along the arrow. So it should be heading up. The separation will be around, I know, less than a minute before separation of the two items now. The main booster from the capsule itself. It's a textbook launch, that is, into a clear blue sky, which is exactly what you need to do. The astronauts must be feeling absolutely fantastic, although not technically astronauts until they beat that Kármán line, but they must be feeling absolutely exhilarated now by going up there.
Well, yes, what might that feel like, Andy? I mean, the speed, how fast are they going? What impact does that have on your body?
Well, it's accelerating constantly, because it doesn't make 17,500, which puts you into orbit, so you're a lot less than that, but you're still at thousands of miles per hour, so you're still travelling at quite a clip when you get up there. But of course, the feeling is that you're pushed slightly back. Go on a roller coaster, one of the faster roller coasters, you get pushed back into your seat, and that's exactly how you feel when you're going up on one of these things. But of course, it's also the way your mental processes are working, your excitement, so your heart will be racing, and you'll be hearing the vibration and the noise as it lifts up. It'd be interesting to know how noisy it is inside those capsules compared to the Apollo days, which were very, very noisy indeed. And anyone who watched the film about Neil Armstrong will know that it's incredibly noisy during liftoff and vibrations. But there seems to be very little vibration with modern vehicles compared to what they used to be.
Should just say that the rocket has now surpassed 300,000 feet. It's travelling at... Oh, it's actually starting to slow down in terms of altitude, in terms of speed. It was well over 1,000 miles per hour, but it's dropping now, because what we will be seeing is the separation of the top capsule from the booster underneath it. Explain that process.
Yes, what you have is because the booster's pushing up the top capsule, and once it's used most of its fuel, it's done its job. So the engine shuts down and then it separates, at which point the top capsule then suddenly races slightly further forward, and that's simply because there's less mass there now. So it actually can move a little bit further forward, and the bottom section now can come back down and land on the ground. It then free flights. A free flight then, it sort of arcs. It's like firing a ballistic trajectory. It just fires something and it does an arc over the Earth. And in this particular case, it'll actually beat the atmosphere, go above the atmosphere, and arc back down to the ground again. So it'll then be in a free flight. And it's that point of free flight when it's on its way there, they'll feel the weightlessness for a short period of time, and then they can enjoy the moment, as you say. Once the separation looks like it's there, you can see two distinct parts of it up there, and that will be quite an exciting part for them to go into that free flight process. So then they can look down on the Earth, experience the weightlessness, and then get prepared for re-entry onto the...
I have to say, Andy, we are now losing altitude. The apogee has been reached of this flight, so that was the way up.
That was it.
They're now having what we can assume is a moment of looking at the Earth. They won't really get a sense of that they're rising or falling at this stage, I should think. All they will see is looking down onto Earth. But we must stress this is a very fast flight. I mean, already reached the peak of their altitude and coming back down again.
Yes, they have. This is it. This is the nature of a suborbital flight. It's just throwing you up and then bringing you back again. Simple as that, really. So it's an expensive way to have a quick flight. But then again, it's the view you get at the top. It's like everything else in life. It's the view from the top which is more important, not the view at the bottom.
I mean, Andy, I queued for hours to go on a ride called Stealth at Fort Park, which gave me a slight feeling of weightlessness because it was absolutely terrifying. So I could see why, you'd spend so much time preparing for just an 11-minute journey to see space and witness the curvature of the Earth. I think that's what I would find most spectacular, Andy.
Well, yes, it is. You've got to see, because then you're seeing your home planet from a position you've never dreamed of. I mean, we're a very lucky generation in that sense that this is going to be able to happen, that ordinary people at some point in the future will be able to make these flights, all being well, with a fair wind, and that would be great. I mean, it's good because it puts your life in perspective. And look at this. Look at the booster coming back down. This is the thing in the modern age which is quite spectacular. You're bringing components back for reuse, much more efficient. And as you can see, how it's falling there, beautifully aerodynamically stable, with the little fins adjusters at the top positioning it, and then of course the little legs will come out for it to land on the bottom with a small thruster, because you've always got some fuel left in the tank. Here it goes, here it's firing. That will actually slow it down as it drops down to the ground. And the little legs, oh, look at this is fantastic. Look at that. Whoa, 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 yeah. Isn't it great?
And there's a big plume of dust. It looks like it didn't get quite in the middle of that landing circle, but it got darn close. There's still some burn going on there. But Andy, am I right in saying that it's only Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, those two billionaires and those two companies, SpaceX and Blue Origin, that have actually achieved this, landing a booster back for reuse? Only these two men's companies have been able to do this.
Yes, so there have been attempts by a couple of other organisations, one in China, which has failed. It's a seriously difficult technology, but once you've mastered it, you've mastered it. And this is the key to cheap flight. You were talking earlier about how much it costs to send up a kilo into space now, and this is the reason why the price has gone down, because you don't have to rebuild this section anymore. You just refit it and can send it off again.
Andy, so the Chinese haven't been able to make this technology work. There must be so much protection over this. Over these secrets, over this intelligence, over this technical knowledge.
I should just mention we're looking now at the capsule that is containing those six astronauts.
There goes the spark.
And it has the balloons, the parachutes out there. This will be landing not with a burn, but with those parachutes as we're traditionally used to seeing in the splashdowns. But this is falling on the Texas sand rather than the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean.
Yes, because it's got good chutes. Because because it's got 3 good chutes to actually do this. It's not cluttered with a lot of equipment that other spacecraft have, of course, because this is just simply a cabin to keep passengers alive when they fly up and come down. So they're not quite as heavy as previous spacecraft like the Apollo capsule and things like that, which are very, very heavy vehicles indeed. So they never really wanted to land them onto the ground. They preferred water landings. But look at that, 3 perfect chutes coming out, and it looks like this has been a textbook mission, and it's absolutely fantastic. The first all-female crew since Valentina Tereshkova in '63 is absolutely magnificent.
Andy, sorry if this is a stupid question, but why do they separate? Why does the rocket separate?
Because once you've actually used your fuel in the booster, it's a waste of mass. You want to lose the mass if you can, and that's what you do. So you bring it back. You don't need to bring the whole thing back because that's a bigger mass than you need to land. So you separate it, and therefore this is a less mass object, and it'll actually accelerate slightly before it actually does its full arc, then fall back down again. And it's a less mass to drop onto the ground, so it's easier to bring back when it's less mass. And you bring the other piece back separate. You just want to separate everything out. It's just more efficient, fuel efficient, and because if you kept the booster attached to it, you've got a much bigger body to try and bring back. You don't really want to do that.
And you need more fuel to get it just as high. This piece of the rocket has spent more time above the Kármán line than the rest of it.
That's amazing.
That's right. It's much more efficient. And the idea of staging rockets was developed by a Russian called Tsiolkovsky at the end of the 19th century. And it's actually, look at that.
Look at that.
There we go.
Katy Perry back on Earth.
So if I remember correctly, that will have been a little burn from some very small sort of booster rockets. Well, not rockets, but you know, that's sort of a quick firing just to soften the landing there of actual sort of rockets at the bottom of this capsule.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing that the military use when they're dropping heavy payloads, such as tanks and equipment from parachutes. They have little thrusters at the bottom which fire just to cushion the blow. That's quite a common technology used around the world by NATO. I think NATO do use that. Certainly the Russians have constantly used that when they were dropping tanks from aircraft, would you believe?
No, it is fascinating to watch, of course, because this is a really quite quick flight. I mean, I'm still a bit staggered that we have watched this rocket from liftoff to landing in the space of just over 11 minutes, and here it is sitting on the Texas sand.
It's interesting. You've left the Earth and come back again. I mean, I don't know whether you need visas or anything like that to re-enter the planet after all that, because I know the Apollo astronauts had an issue with that with American immigration. Would you believe they had to carry passports with them because they'd entered the country from outside of it, which is quite ridiculous. But I don't suppose that matters in this particular case. It would be interesting. But yes, look how short that mission has been. The money you've paid to do it, people say perhaps you could have spent that money doing something else, but it's their money. And if I had the money, would I do it?
Andy,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. It looks like the passengers there, or the crew, whatever you want to call them, the all-female crew there are waving out of the windows. Presumably a team will now come and collect them. What happens next, Andy?
Yes, the team will come out and collect them. They sit where they are and they check everything is safe, secure, everybody's happy and healthy, and that's really important before the team goes out and releases them from their exciting mission. They'll do what's called a quick debrief to make sure everybody's healthy, happy, and that there were no issues regarding the mission itself, whether the spacecraft behaved as it should have behaved, and these are all the technical things you must go through to make sure that the next mission is just as safe. And it'd be interesting to know what they were doing while they were up there, because we'll hear all of this, because Katy Perry was planning on singing, I think. But it would have been interesting. It'd be nice to bring up a simple experiment with you when you're going up on a short mission like that, because you do have weightlessness, and it would be interesting to have something with you to actually do a test of some kind with. But that's the scientist in me that is always wanting to work rather than just enjoy the flight. But wow, it's very exciting. I mean, this is great. This has got the world looking at this. People you would never expect to look at a rocket launch will be looking at this. All the Katy Perry fans will be looking at it.
And you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And thank you so much for following along with us and giving us all your expertise. And I do hope that one day you'll be on one of those capsules heading up into space. I really do hope that for you. Andy Loud.
Maybe you two could come with me.
I would love to, Andy, as long as I don't get emotional. motion sickness. Andy Loud, space expert, thank you very much indeed.
Well, joining us now is the astrophysicist and Professor of Science at Harvard University, Avi Loeb. Avi, thanks for joining us here today. I mean, we have just witnessed what I think is probably the fastest space flight, not in terms of the speed of the capsule, but in the terms of the from start to end of the mission, just over 11 minutes. But these astronauts on board must be delighted.
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic experience, but they went up to about just short of 1% of the Earth's diameter. So that's the boundary of space. But, I very much hope that humanity will have many more trips to outer space. In fact, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Blue Origins, argued that there should be billions of people going to space. There should be a new industry called space tourism that he envisioned a few years ago.
I'm a bit disappointed that we didn't get to see their facial expressions from within the capsule. Clearly there wasn't a live feed there when they were actually going up, but it must be the most extraordinary experience. But you note that this is only 1% of the world's diameter. They're very much just on the cusp of space. Right. But are you impressed nonetheless, Avi?
Oh yeah, and I would love to go to space one day. I do think I have two daughters, and I do think that women are a much better representation of humanity out there if we ever encounter aliens, for example, because they have much better communication skills. So I think this is the first step, but it should be repeated many times over.
Goodness me! Well, of course, this is.
You're going to take that, Tom?
Oh, I'll let it pass. But this is of course a pretty interesting sort of hop that we've started to see much more regularly. I mean, we are going to see perhaps this space tourism market once these floodgates are now open, as perhaps they have been, given the demonstrable safety of this mission. Many more millionaires and billionaires will be taking a trip.
Yes, in fact, a few weeks ago, I visited Richard Branson in Necker Island, and he has a vision for space tourism as well. And I do hope it will become a reality, because there is much more real estate out there than we have on Earth. And we keep fighting over territories on this small rock that we were born on. But we have to recognize that, humans about 100,000 years ago left the jungles of Africa, and that was a big transition. And now we live in high-rises in cities, very different than the trees in jungles. I think the next transition over the next millennium or so would be to move from high-rises in cities on Earth to platforms in space.
Wow.
It's obvious that this is the future because, there is too much risk staying on a single rock. And by the way, moving to another rock is not such a big deal as Elon Musk is trying to argue. Just hopping from one rock to another is similar to hopping from one tree to another in the jungle. What we really want is to have an artificial space platform on which people can live.
Surely what we want, Avi, is to spread amongst the stars, people living not just on one rock or another rock, but on all of the rocks. So, having a moon base, having a self-sustaining civilization on Mars, and also having your platforms that you speak of that whiz between them.
Yeah. I do think that, one reason that we are not inspired as much about space, that we spend $2.4 trillion a year on military budgets, looking down rather than looking up, is because we haven't recognized yet that we might have a neighbor, some other civilization that is far more accomplished. And when we see any evidence in our backyard that they arrived to visit us, when we see that, it might be a bit late, but it would give us the obvious message that we should have done it.
Hang on, Avi. If there really was an intelligent life force out there, would we not have spotted it by now?
Definitely not, because space is vast. The size of the Milky Way galaxy alone is hundreds of thousands of light years. And that's just our own galaxy. The universe at large is far bigger. It's, tens of billions of light years large. And so space is vast, interstellar space is vast. They may have visited us 1 million years ago. There was nobody around to write it down. The point is that we need to seek them in order to find them. You know, Enrico Fermi argued, where is everybody? And that's a question that every lonely person asks. And what you tell a lonely person is, don't be so presumptuous. You need to go to dating sites. You need, at the very least, to look through your windows.
Well, on the image of the interstellar dating site, Avi, we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you so much for talking us through. We are just looking at live pictures now of the trucks that have gone out to go and pick up the celebrities from this space mission. But thanks indeed for joining us, Avi Loeb, Professor of Science at Harvard University.
Well, Tom, I'm feeling much less worried about the state of this world than I was before. We can all just hop on to another soon enough. Well, joining us now is astronomer Dr. David Whitehouse. Dr. David, do you agree there with Avi that one day we could be, you know, living in parts of space or simply on another rock?
Yes, I think our future does lie in space, and I think that in the long term we will have bases on the moon and people will live on Mars. But in the next few centuries, there's going to be very few people doing that. We are just building a foothold out there for large-scale inhabitation of Mars and space stations. You're talking hundreds and hundreds of years. It's a very difficult thing to live on anything else in space other than the Earth, which has been designed for us for several billion years. So yes, if you take the long-term view of humanity, then yes, we will have outcrops and outposts out there in space, and we will explore the solar system and go beyond. But there's no alternative to the fact that most of humanity will live on Earth for the foreseeable future as far as we can see it.
Now, we're just looking at live pictures of the Texas desert there, where a huge number of people have come out to prise open the capsule of those 6 women who spent 11 minutes on their journey up just to the edge of space, just beyond what's known as the Kármán line, to come back down. This is still a pretty profound moment for them all. What sort of checks will need to be done to this capsule before they can open it up?
Well, they need to make sure they're all safe and they haven't been any problems, medical problems or injuries in actually coming down, because it's a little bit of a jolt, but the seats are well designed to do that. So they have to make sure there are no toxic chemicals or anything residual from the rocket on the outside. But this is all fairly straightforward for them to do. They've done it many times before. So yes, they will be putting the gantry up, they'll be checking everything, and in a few moments' time we should see these people emerge. They say forever changed. People who've done this, even though they only spent a few minutes there, people say it's not what you go and see, it's what you come back with.
Well, it looks like we're just about to see that all-female crew, see Katy Perry back on Earth firmly. Who else have we got on the crew? We've got a huge number, well, 6, obviously. Gayle King, a TV presenter in the US, CBS Mornings. We've got Aisha Bowe, a former NASA rocket scientist and chief executive of a technology company. We've got Amanda Nugent, civil rights activist. Carrie-Anne Flynn, a film producer. I don't know all of those people. And, of course,
Lauren Sanchez, the fiancée of Jeff Bezos, who, of course, funds the entire operation. It really is the battle of the billionaires.
She's the reason why the Kardashians are there. Apparently, she's a close friend of the Kardashian family. So
well, there we go. I mean, it is a who's who of American celebrity there in this particular part of the Texas desert. But Dr. David Whitehouse still with us, of course. We can see, I think, Jeff Bezos there looking through the window and some activity inside that capsule. It looks like there are some people perhaps waving. I can't quite make it out.
Well, they're waving and preparing for their close-ups as they come out. You're quite right. This is Celebrityville. This is not space tourism for the masses and will not be for a long time. Although you can put a down payment on a seat for one of these missions for $150,000, the price you actually pay will depend upon who you are. I mean, I'm sure that the celebrities inside that capsule did not pay anywhere near the going rate if a normal person wanted to go up there. You get a discount and wriggle room on the payment if you're rich and famous and if you bring publicity and all that entails with it.
David,
Sorry,
I was just wondering, should we be calling them a crew or should we be calling them passengers? Because there seems to be a disagreement when it comes to what our viewers and listeners are saying. What do you think?
Well, crew's fine. They are passengers. They don't fly the spacecraft. The spacecraft is entirely automatic, so they're not pilots. But they are crew. They are a crew that go up together, that train together, although admittedly only for 2 days. You train for this 11-minute flight. So I think crew is fine, team, whatever you like. I think it was a masterstroke to have them all dressed up in those superhero costumes that they had. I think they look very striking. And I think you can expect to see footage of Katy Perry floating around in that costume.
David, the door is now open. I'm just going to butt in rudely there to see if we can see who is going to pop out. Are they all okay? What will they have thought? That looks like Kerry-Anne Flynn, the film producer. Oh, no, that is Lauren Sanchez, the fiancée of Jeff Bezos. Pretty extraordinary stuff, the person who convened the entire mission. She's a little bit flustered there.
And it's Katy Perry reaching for the stars.
Oh, fantastic. They all look absolutely delighted. Over the moon, or perhaps I should say...
kissing the ground.
Over the Carmen line.
Katy Perry has come out of the capsule. She's raised her hand to the sky and then kissed the floor beneath her. So there you go. Love the drama.
Yeah, Dr. David, we are seeing them come out one by one, all absolutely delighted, of course.
Remember William Shatner when he came out, having been the oldest man to go into space, he was overwhelmed with emotion. But I think that their relief is obviously that they've done something remarkable. But we mustn't lose sight of the fact that space travel is still a dangerous occupation. These astronauts will have been told in no uncertain terms that it is not a completely safe deal. Although they have a perfect track record, getting into space involves the liberation of a vast amount of energy in a short amount of time. And however many people go into space, sooner or later there will be an accident, and we have to be prepared for that. It is not as safe as ordinary travel.
It is extraordinary how many of these women are popping out and not just cheering, not just sort of celebrating, but also kissing the ground.
They've got to get their Instagram moment, Tom.
I mean, there is a greater connection to the Earth when you've seen it from so high. Sorry, Dr. David, there is a connection, to Earth.
Well, people tell you this. I mean, there are people react in all sorts of ways when they've gone into space. I mean, many of the early astronauts who were space professionals and they were chosen from scientific or test pilot stock said you have to take, perhaps eventually you have to take poets, you have to take artists up to get a different perspective and a different reflection of what's gone into space. Well, we have Katy Perry now. She's no doubt going to go and write a song about this and reflect on it that way. And that is good because space is a heritage of mankind. Few people can get there at the moment. You either have to be highly trained or have a great deal of money or have the right connections. But space is part of our world. It's a natural environment which overlays planet Earth. And therefore it is a heritage of all of us that we should enjoy, study, observe, and vicariously go along into space with our pop stars and our heroes.
I mean, it's a good way to come out, isn't it? Come out, reach for the stars, kiss the ground below them. They are performers, a lot of them, you know?
They are getting that money shot.
Of course,
for
yeah,
the magazines,
absolutely they
for their
are.
own social media accounts, and for all the rest of it. But this is, of course, a moment not just in their own lives, but also in the story of space travel, because there are going to be so many more people now taking this space tourism route, and that will plough more money into the sector, perhaps allowing for even further exploration further than just the edge of space. Dr. David.
I wonder if we can take a quick listen into what Lauren Sanchez is saying there, Jeff Bezos' fiancée. Let's take a little listen.
Quiet, but then also really alive. And you look at it and you're like, we're all in this together. Like, that's all I could think about is like, we're so connected, more connected than you realize, because you just see right here, you see like, you know, states and all these things that like divide us, but we're not. And
what is your emotion? What makes you emotional?
Joy. just complete and utter joy and gratefulness. Like, it makes me want to come back and just hug everyone and be like, oh my God, we're in this together. Like, that's what this is. And
Jeff had told you that it will change you more than you know, and I know you're only a few minutes removed from the capsule, but I can tell already.
Emotional.
Yeah.
Oh. To be this I'm like, I don't cry that often. So I didn't expect to be this emotional, but it's also all the love that was in that capsule and all the heart and the feelings and all the things, and like seeing Jeff before I left, I just went, I had to come back. I mean, we're getting married. If I didn't come back, that would be a bummer for me.
Only you, by the way, would say this to me. You said, Jeff, if you don't want to marry me, you don't have to send me to space.
Don't have to send me to space.
What an incredible experience for you. But the fact that when you're in there, we got to hear some of your audio, but give us some of those moments when you guys, just from the second you took off to the second you landed, describe, if you can, for us what we didn't get to hear.
It was a feeling of joy and and camaraderie. It was a feeling of gratefulness. It was a feeling that we're doing this. And Alan Shepard, I told you about this, did this same exact flight, and he became the first American in space. And 6 women just did the same flight that he did it.
Oh, I just want to keep hugging you.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
and I hope that more people get to see this, because I feel I don't even know how much it's going to change me, and I want to thank the Blue team. I mean, look at them. I mean, they work so hard to make sure this vehicle gets up and safe, and
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. It's one thing to say you're going to do it. It's another thing to actually do it. And I know there's a phrase in your family that life takes off on the other side of fear. And here you are, just having landed back on Earth. And now you are officially, Lauren Sanchez, already adding to your extensive resume, you are an astronaut. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very excited. I'm excited to share it with the world, and I'm so grateful to everyone here.
I love you. Go be with your family. But
okay, well, that was Lauren Sanchez. That's Jeff Bezos, the billionaire's fiance. Very excited she was. Very happy.
Absolutely.
Delighted.
She spent 11 minutes on that mission to space. But joining us now, of course, is Martin Daubney. Martin, it's your time to pick up the baton, but we wanted to ask you your perspective on what was a pretty remarkable little hop up there into space.
Are you feeling a bit emotional, Martin?